Cultfigga TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao Mean of Revolution, the Rise of the Dragon. You got a World War III alert. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. You in the House of Revolution. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. We're the hardest working revolutionary in the business is back. Revolution is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I got some revolutionary dinner for y'all. Iran is getting powerful. By the day, more powerful. Let's get into the content.
Iran had not yet recovered from the Israeli and American strike that caused a massacre of its air defenses when China surprised everyone by entering the front line with a squadron of J-35 stealth fighters that will arrive in Iran soon. A stealth nightmare coming from the east that cannot be detected even by the most powerful American radars. What's the story behind these fighter jets that prompted Netanyahu to request acquire American B-2 Spirit bombers to finish off what remains of Iran's ballistic missile program? We reveal many secrets and details to you, our dear viewers, in this video. Stay tuned. J-35 Chinese stealth fighter soon in Iran. The Shenyang J-35 is a fifth-generation Chinese multi-role fighter jet. Iran sees it as a powerful deterrent that will protect its troubled borders from Israeli and American aircraft. The J-35 is a good alternative and an excellent choice for countries that cannot afford the American F-35 fighter jet. It first appeared at the 2014 China Air Show and was originally designed for service in the Chinese Navy aboard the Fusion aircraft carrier, which poses a significant threat to US bases. The aircraft is powered by two WS-19 turbofan engines, which China claims are more powerful, quieter, and emit less heat than their competitors. The twin engines allow the aircraft to reach an altitude of 16,800 meters, fly at maximum speed of 1.8 Mach, and have a range of 2,000 kilometers with basic fuel tanks and 5,000 kilometers with additional tanks and in-flight refueling. The fighter can take off from short runways up to 400 meters long and has an estimated service life of about 30 years. A closer look at the J-35 Gerfalcon's armament. The new Chinese fighter features a structure made of a combination of metals that dissipate heat and absorb radar waves. The exterior design of the aircraft is based on stealth aircraft and is coated with a special paint to scatter reflected radar signals, deceiving Israel and US radars into believing that the aircraft is 250 times smaller than its actual size. The length of the J-35 stealth aircraft coming to Iran is 17.5 meters, its width is 11.5 meters, and its height is 4.8 meters. It weighs 11,300 kilograms empty and 28,000 kilograms at maximum takeoff weight, including ammunition and fuel tanks. The fighter has 10 external hardpoints that can carry 4,200 kilograms of ammunition, and it's also capable of carrying ammunition inside the aircraft through 8 launch ports weighing up to 2,000 kilograms, giving it a maximum ammunition load of over 6 tons. For air combat missions, the fighter is armed with PL-15 missiles, which successfully shot down a large number of Indian aircraft in their first real combat. It's also armed with PL-XX missiles, which have been classified as the best air-to-air missile to date. It was produced by China in 2014. It's said to be a stealth anti-aircraft missile that travels at 8 times the speed of sound and has a range of 500 kilometers. However, the engineering and technology used in its production have not been disclosed, and there is no confirmed information that Pakistan has acquired this deadly missile. The main purpose of producing the missile was to attack larger, more distant, and more important targets such as enemy bombers, transport aircraft, military vehicles, and airborne early warning aircraft, which play a key role in the operations of many of China's potential enemies and allies. China has equipped its stealth fighters with lethal missiles for land and sea combat as part of its quest to provide a version of its hypersonic missiles, such as the Long March 2C, to be compatible with its fifth-generation stealth fighters. Although the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation has announced that the aircraft is capable of launching this type of munition, it hasn't disclosed its model or specifications. The J-20 can also carry 6 Chinese CJ-10 cruise missiles, which can carry nuclear warheads and have a maximum range of 1,800 kilometers. Can also carry laser-guided, optically guided, or inertial-guided bombs, as well as thermobaric, nuclear, and penetration bombs. Alternatively, it can carry 30 conventional bombs weighing no more than 180 kilograms, and the aircraft can drop them all at once or in pairs. To combat US submarines and aircraft carriers, the Chinese stealth fighter is equipped with C-81 air-to-surface missiles in the K and C versions. The K version has a speed of Mach 2 or 2,360 km per hour and a maximum range of 65 km, while the C version has a speed of 1.7 Mach and a maximum range of 140 km. How does the J-35 can target US fighter? In addition to the innovative design of the fighter, China has equipped the aircraft with stealth technology, also known as passive radar, which reads enemy ground radar signals and sends back signals with a negative value similar to that of the radar, resulting in a zero reading. As a result, enemy radar and its operators will not be able to detect any object within their search range. So far, no other power besides China itself has radar devices that use millimeter waves, which means that it surpasses all of its competitors.
Until Pakistan humiliated India using Chinese weaponry against some of NATO's fighter planes, the U.S. and NATO was saying this shit didn't work because China haven't went to war with nobody, so they was able to get away with that. After the humiliation of India and those NATO warplanes with the advanced Chinese warplanes and their missiles, nobody's taking China as a joke anymore.
Competitors in its ability to detect stealth aircraft while no one is able to detect its aircraft.
So
China also conceals the technologies used in its stealth aircraft, a precautionary measure followed by most armies that manufacture tactical weapons, but it has revealed that its aircraft are equipped with 1,475 type radar. The same radar used in the J-20 stealth fighter and all versions of the J-35. It said that its detection range for aircraft, radars, and enemy defense systems is 1,500 kilometers, and that is equipped with the Chinese electro-optical targeting system in addition to an infrared search and tracking system. China's journey with stealth aircraft. In April 2011, Beijing announced the successful flight test of the J-20, its first 100 stealth aircraft. Based on the J-20, another stealth aircraft called the J-31 was produced in 2014, which was later modified to become the FC-35. It was modified again to become the FC-60, and finally in 2019 it became the J-35 that we talked about in this video. The versions differ in the type of metals used, the weight of the aircraft, the engines, and the ammunition load. The latest version uses WS-19 engines, which are advanced Chinese engines based on the Russian RD-33 engine used in the MiG-35. However, the Chinese engine outperforms its Russian counterpart in terms of its ability to achieve 9,000 hours of operation without the need to replace its basic parts and its fuel efficiency of up to 20%, even at maximum speed and altitude, which means that the Chinese aircraft does not incur high operating costs compared to its counterparts. At the end of the video, dear viewer, what do you think of the capabilities of Chinese stealth fighters? Do you think they will succeed in protecting Iran's skies from American aircraft? Let us know in the comments.
For foreign jets suddenly close and on China's Liaoning aircraft carrier in the Western Pacific. Within seconds, J-15 fighters launched through stormy skies, armed, fast, and locked in. This isn't a simulation. It's real footage just released by Chinese state media, and it's shaking up the conversation around airspace, presence, and power in the Pacific. So what really happened? And what does this bold display mean for the future of high-stakes regional operations? Imagine 4 unidentified jets approaching a naval fleet in one of the world's most watched maritime zones, the Western Pacific. That's exactly what happened recently as China's Liaoning aircraft carrier detected 4 foreign aircraft moving closer. The exact timing and the country of origin weren't officially disclosed, but Chinese authorities say the approaching jets were simulating hostile patterns, flying formations that closely resemble attack rehearsals. So what did the Liaoning do? Chinese media reported
NATO do this bullshit off the coast of China, Russia, and everywhere else around the world. You call it drills and freedom of navigation, but they don't want nobody. But China and Russia have started doing it over Alaska and near U.S. border. Start giving them the taste of their own goddamn medicine, because the U.S., everybody knows, they're testing people capabilities, testing your react times, and when they catch you slipping, they're gonna get you.
Reports, specifically from CCTV and the Global Times, say the command center didn't hesitate. Despite the poor weather, thick clouds, high winds, and intense rain, the crew made a critical decision. They scrambled J-15 fighter jets from the deck of the aircraft carrier, each equipped with live missiles, and directed them straight into the storm. Launching aircraft from a carrier isn't easy under normal conditions, but doing so in poor weather ramps up the difficulty to another level. Convection currents, visibility issues, and narrow timing windows for takeoff and landing all pose major safety concerns. Yet the Chinese Navy moved forward, confident in its systems and its training. Footage released by Chinese state media shows the J-15 jets roaring into the sky with urgency. These weren't practice runs. This was a real-time response to a potential airspace intrusion. According to the report, once airborne, the J-15S reached the targeted area and executed a series of tactical aerial maneuvers designed to intercept and redirect the foreign jets away from the Chinese fleet. And that's exactly what happened. The foreign aircraft disengaged and departed the area. China's decision to release this footage is just as important as the mission itself. It wasn't leaked or filmed by chance. It was strategically shared with domestic and international viewers to emphasize a message. China's carrier group is not just symbolic, it's operational and ready to act when necessary. When the Liaoning's J-15 fighters launched into rough skies to intercept foreign jets, it wasn't just a matter of protocol, it was a high-stakes display of capability under stress. Aircraft carriers are built for complex operations, but bad weather changes everything. What the world saw was China executing one of the most technically demanding tasks in naval aviation under some of the most unfavorable conditions. Heavy rainfall, thick cloud layers, and unstable air masses dominated the skies that day. According to Chinese media, strong convection made visibility unpredictable, which is critical for both safe takeoffs and successful landings. In such environments, flight crews face enormous risks not only from the skies but from every movement on the carrier's deck, where timing is critical and every second counts. The J-15S didn't just take off. They did so in coordination with a carrier crew that had to adapt quickly to changing flight windows. Carrier-based aviation requires near-flawless communication between pilots, deck crews, air traffic coordinators, and command officers. This mission showed all those pieces coming together in real time. One of the more remarkable parts of this operation was how the J-15 pilots maintained control and tactical awareness in such a difficult environment. Performing standard maneuvers is one thing. Executing complex aerial coordination under low visibility with live munitions on board is another. The pilots had to stay fully aware of both their surroundings and their aircraft limits while navigating an evolving situation. Chinese defense expert Song Zhongping commented that this incident showcased the Liaoning's ability to operate in all weather conditions, a capability that has long been seen as a benchmark for any modern navy. And it's not just about the ship. The J-15 fighter jets, despite criticisms in the past regarding weight and fuel consumption, delivered exactly what was needed: rapid response, stability in flight, and coordination with carrier systems. the implications go beyond one event. This was a real-time validation of China's long-term investment in aircraft carrier development and pilot training. Years of simulations and drills are useful, but a live mission, responding to foreign aircraft while flying through stormy skies, is a far more meaningful test. For decades, the Western Pacific has been a stage largely dominated by the operations of a few global navies. But this recent event involving the Liaoning and the J-15S signals something deeper, the arrival of a new dynamic. The phrase from PLA Navy pilot Ku Shui Long, for decades, they operated alone. Today, we compete in the same field, isn't just a reflection. It's a declaration of presence. What sets this incident apart isn't just the execution of the mission, it's what it represents. The presence of a Chinese carrier strike group, operating hundreds of miles from home waters and intercepting foreign aircraft in real time, confirms that China's maritime reach is now active and assertive. The Western Pacific is no longer a zone where only a handful of countries operate freely. It's now shared space, and the rules are changing. China's growing ability to sustain operations in distant waters is part of its Far Seas defense strategy. That doesn't mean extending borders, but rather maintaining the freedom to operate in international waters while ensuring that its naval assets are protected. Interceptions like this demonstrate that China is not only watching closely but ready to respond within international norms and under high-risk conditions. The decision to release video footage from this incident was also telling. It wasn't classified. It wasn't hidden. It was produced and distributed widely to domestic and international audiences. This was a clear example of narrative control, using visuals to demonstrate readiness, professionalism, and capability without confrontation. While the footage and response focused on the air element, it also spotlighted the Liaoning itself. Once criticized as a training vessel or symbolic carrier, the Liaoning has now participated in multiple exercises and, in this case, a real-world encounter that required precision, judgment, and seamless coordination. There's also a domestic angle. These types of missions boost public confidence in the country's defense readiness and validate investments made over the past 2 decades in developing a blue water navy. What's becoming clear is that the Western Pacific is entering a new phase, one marked by more competition, more presence, and a much smaller margin for error. As more nations operate advanced naval platforms in the same waters, coordination, communication, and restraint will be critical. Incidents like this will continue to shape the future. This event wasn't just about aircraft scrambling in a storm, it was about a message. The successful J-15 launch from the Liaoning under extreme conditions proved that China's naval aviation isn't just catching up, it's operating with confidence. With no shots fired and no names named, the encounter highlighted a sophisticated, professional response that blends readiness, restraint, and real-world capability. As China continues to expand its reach across the Pacific, incidents like this one will shape the narrative. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on space exploration.
Amid the escalating tensions between China and Taiwan, China is leaving no stones unturned to show off its military powers.
Well, there are some who believe that China, the newest superpower on the world bloc, is the country to watch.
Some U.S. Navy warships are getting another option to counter unmanned aircraft systems, or drones.
Imagine watching what seems like an ordinary cargo ship, slowly gliding across the ocean. It's not armed. It doesn't look suspicious. In fact, it looks like every other commercial vessel you've seen before. But beneath that harmless surface lies a shocking truth. It's built for war. Welcome back to Race to Space, the channel where we dive into the world of military technology, strategy, and power. Today, we're exposing one of China's quietest, smartest, and most chilling strategies yet, the transformation of civilian ships into hidden weapons of war. No, this isn't science fiction. This isn't a scene from some futuristic military thriller. It's real, and it's unfolding right now, across oceans, behind cargo containers, and deep within the shipping lanes of global commerce. And what's more alarming, the US military is watching closely, and they're worried. Why? Because China doesn't just command the largest navy in terms of hull numbers. It also owns the largest commercial shipping fleet on the planet. We're talking thousands of vessels, container ships, bulk carriers, oil tankers, ferries, and ro-ro transporters. On paper, these ships serve civilian purposes. They deliver goods. They transport vehicles. They ferry passengers across ports and islands. But behind closed doors and increasingly out in the open, many of these vessels are being secretly, systematically upgraded for war. What kind of upgrades? Military-grade helipads, capable of launching and receiving attack helicopters. Heavy-duty loading ramps, reinforced to carry main battle tanks and armored vehicles. Ro-ro decks retrofitted for rapid vehicle deployment. Even hidden troop compartments, turning cruise ferries into stealthy amphibious assault transports. And the most chilling part? Some ships are being equipped with modular weapon systems, missile canisters, radar arrays, and communication suites that can be installed in a matter of hours. In peacetime, they're just another cargo hauler. But in a crisis, they become floating launch platforms, command hubs, or forward operating bases. This is civil-military fusion at sea. It blurs the line between peaceful commerce and pre-positioned power projection. And in a conflict scenario, especially over Taiwan or in the South China Sea, these civilian vessels could be the first wave before the world even realizes a war has begun. So strap in, because today we're diving into China's shadow fleet, a hidden naval force hiding in plain sight, waiting for the moment to transform global trade routes into invasion corridors. In short, these ships are built to blend in until it's too late. Analysts and military experts now call it the dark fleet, because from above it looks like nothing. From satellite photos, it's just regular shipping traffic. But China has figured out how to hide a military in plain sight. These aren't warships with giant cannons or aircraft launch decks, but that's the genius of it. In a high-stakes situation, say a sudden conflict near Taiwan or the South China Sea, these civilian vessels can turn into supply hubs, troop transporters, or even deception units. And since they're legally registered as non-combatants, no one sees the danger until they're already part of the fight. Let's talk about fear, because make no mistake, the US is worried, deeply worried, because of one and only reason: you can't see them coming. When China launches its navy, the Pentagon knows what to look for. They can follow the warships, aircraft carriers, and destroyers. But these civilian ships, they blend into the background. They're everywhere, and they're legal. That's what makes them dangerous. In a moment of war, the US Navy might face a swarm of ships and not know which ones are harmless and which ones are packed with weapons or soldiers. That hesitation could cost valuable time. It could cost entire missions. Worse, these ships can sneak into places warships can't, near civilian ports, along unguarded coastlines, or behind enemy lines disguised as humanitarian aid. Let's break this down into what these ships can actually do. Some of China's massive ro-ro ferries have already conducted military exercises, loading and unloading tanks, armored vehicles, and troops with military precision. In one drill, a civilian ferry deployed an entire battalion onto a beach in under an hour. Others have been seen with helipads, launching and recovering helicopters as if they were aircraft carriers. Cargo ships can become mobile resupply stations, floating warehouses that follow fleets deep into contested waters. And since they're not official warships, targeting them becomes a legal and political nightmare. So if China launches a rapid invasion or blockade, it won't just be the Navy. It'll be this hidden fleet, moving silently and efficiently, filling gaps in logistics deception, and power projection. Navies are expensive to build and maintain. But cargo ships? China already has thousands. Retrofitting them is cheaper, faster, and harder to detect. This gives China the ultimate flexibility. They can mass deploy a military-grade logistics fleet without ever launching a traditional warship. They can reinforce islands, supply troops, or create floating bases without raising alarms. And in peacetime, these ships return to carrying cars, shipping containers, or tourists. No one notices, no one panics. In other words, it is the perfect blend of economy, deception, and preparation. Think of it like the Trojan horse in ancient mythology. The Greeks offered a gift, the Trojans accepted it, and once the gates were open, soldiers poured out from inside. China's version? A smiling ferry docking at a port that's actually carrying a mobile radar station, a cargo vessel anchored offshore that's packed with drones, launchers, or comms gear. These ships are Trojan horses on water. They look harmless. They act harmless until the moment they don't. And that moment could decide the future of an entire region. Let's not forget, China has also been using civilian fishing boats as a shadow navy, sometimes called the maritime militia. These aren't your everyday fishermen. They're often ex-soldiers or reserve naval personnel equipped with GPS, radios, and orders to patrol disputed waters. In the South China Sea, these fishing vessels have been used to push back foreign ships, occupy reefs, and even block U.S. Navy vessels, all while maintaining civilian status. So what we're seeing isn't just random, it's a doctrine, a strategy, a deliberate shift toward a new kind of naval warfare where deception, flexibility, and surprise matter more than raw firepower. The United States is now waking up to this threat, but it might already be too late to stop it. America's Navy is still focused on large, expensive warships, aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines. These platforms take years to build and billions to maintain. But how do you fight a war when your enemy is hiding behind cargo ships? Some U.S. military thinkers are now calling for greater scrutiny of Chinese commercial ships. But that's easier said than done. International law protects civilian vessels, and no one wants to start a war by attacking a cargo ship that might be hiding troops. At this point, it's safe to say that it's a legal and strategic gray zone, and China is dominating it. In the next war, victory may not go to the side with the most firepower. It may go to the side that sees the battlefield before the fight even starts. And China? It's mastering the art of blurred lines. You can say this is hybrid warfare at sea. It's a gray zone conflict, naval edition. And that's what makes this approach so dangerously effective. It weaponizes ambiguity, it forces adversaries to guess, and punishes them for guessing wrong. If this video opened your eyes to the invisible battlefield unfolding across international waters, give us a like, subscribe to Race to Space, and share your thoughts in the comments. Is the world truly ready for this kind of naval deception? Because the future of warfare may not announce itself with explosions. It may arrive quietly, hidden in plain sight. This is Race to Space, and we'll see you in the next one. Stay sharp, stay skeptical.
Beijing, according to reporting by the Financial Times.
U.S. intelligence agencies believe it is constructing what will be the world's largest military command center. The building site is located 30 kilometers southwest of Beijing. Construction began in mid-2024, and progress has been swift.
Imagine a city with no sunlight, no skyline, and no civilian population, no cars, no social media. A city made up of just concrete, steel, oxygen pumps, encrypted command terminals, and launch-ready buttons. This isn't a Cold War novel. This is China. Right now, welcome back to Race to Space, your one-stop for decoding the war machines, shadow operations, and survival strategies of the world's most powerful nations. And today we're descending into the depths of what might be the most terrifying, ambitious, and secretive military project China has ever undertaken. Because the truth is, Beijing is not just preparing for the upcoming war, it is building to outlast one.
A nuclear war.
It's been nicknamed the Beijing Military City. But this isn't just some hardened bunker or weapons depot. Analysts say we're looking at an entire underground city carved beneath the mountains, complete with nuclear reactors, oxygen reserves, power plants, satellite-linked command hubs, and enough food and water to keep China's top leadership alive and operational for years. Satellite imagery, whistleblower reports, and thermal scans have all confirmed abnormal subterranean development beneath key Chinese mountain ranges, including the Taihang and Qinling ranges.
Okay.
And what's down?
Now, that's very good information to analyze, because after what we just seen with Iran and the US B-2 bombers trying to destroy their nuclear facilities under the Fordow Mountains, they couldn't destroy it because we found out the mountains, you can't destroy those mountains. So now we find out China, like other militaries around the world will do, they're going to build whole cities under the mountains and prepare for nuclear war.
Down there isn't just a shelter, it's a second Beijing minus the public eye. In fact, what China's building looks less like a bomb shelter and more like a buried nation state, a fortress of pure command continuity, a post-apocalyptic palace from which China could rule what remains of the earth after the surface has burned. But you might ask, why build such a thing? Because nuclear war has evolved, and China knows it. Back in the day, surviving a nuclear exchange meant hiding in a bunker for a few days. Today, it means surviving cyber blackouts, orbital strikes, AI-generated swarms, and multi-phase EMP warfare. It means living through not just the attack, but the decade of anarchy that follows. That's where this secret underground city comes in. This is not just a shelter, it's civilization insurance. It's Beijing's ultimate play. When the missiles fly and satellites fall, the party doesn't end. Instead, it moves underground. And this is where China is planning not just to survive that stage, but to dominate it and lead with its army. Reports suggest the Beijing military city is engineered with the kind of redundancy you only see in science fiction. Think redundant nuclear reactors powering underground cities with zero reliance on surface grids, massive oxygen generation systems and CO2 scrubbers to recycle breathable air, hydroponic farms growing enough food to sustain thousands for years, deep earth aquifers providing freshwater security, reinforced walls several meters thick, designed to absorb nuclear shock waves, entire communication grids with fiber optic shielding, EMP-proof nodes, and AI-controlled data traffic. It's all there. Every square meter is a backup. Every room is a control center. Every hallway is built to outlast Armageddon. And while the US once held the title with Cheyenne Mountain or Site R, what China is building is exponentially more ambitious. This isn't about hiding a few generals from the surface-level war. It's about transferring the entire chain of command underground. Military analysts believe the Beijing military city can house PLA's full wartime central command, TCCP political leadership, scientific and nuclear specialists, cyber warfare teams, autonomous drone and satellite operation units. That's not just survival, it's command continuity. China is betting that in the next world war, whoever keeps command the longest wins. And if everyone else's leadership is vaporized, offline, or choking on radiation, well, Beijing's still taking calls from underground. Now keep in mind that this isn't the first time humanity has buried its most important assets like this. The US has NORAD in Cheyenne Mountain, while Russia has Yamantau and Kosvinsky Mountain. But even those behemoths pale in comparison to the scale and purpose of China's new installation. NORAD is a detection facility. Yamantau is mostly a storage vault, but the Beijing military city, it's an entire civilization nerve center designed to run a nation, even while the surface descends into chaos. It's China's way of saying, you can kill the world. You will never be able to kill our command. Now here's another, and that is the depth of the facility. Honestly, depth matters. Most command bunkers lie a few hundred meters underground, but Chinese construction reportedly reaches kilometer-level depths using tunnel boring technology borrowed from civilian mega projects like high-speed rail and urban metro expansion. What makes the Beijing military city unique is that it doesn't just house missiles and ministers. It sustains a military civilization. Some leaks suggest that there are full-scale training facilities, barracks, weapons depots, and even diplomatic reception halls buried in the complex. Why? Because China's doctrine has changed. In the event of World War III, China doesn't just want to strike back, it wants to continue operations, continue governance, continue to function as a nation while everyone else collapses. And that's what has Washington sweating. Now here's the real kicker. The US doesn't have anything even close to this level of underground readiness. Yes, there are bunkers. Yes, there are shelters. But a fully integrated, long-term autonomous command city capable of functioning indefinitely underground? That's science fiction for America, reality for China. The Pentagon is concerned not just with the existence of this military city, but what it represents. A war-fighting command that can't be destroyed by nukes. A leadership infrastructure immune to orbital weapons. A psychological message that proudly boasts, we don't need to win fast, we just need to outlast you. That thought alone is enough to keep US brass up at night. Because make no mistake, on the surface level, this may look like a war of missiles and maps. Of course, China denies these allegations. Officially, such bunkers are just civil defense infrastructure, but their scale, location, and technological integration suggest something far more elaborate. So we ask, is this the ultimate war command or the ultimate peace insurance? Maybe it's both. Maybe China is planning for the war it hopes never comes, but if it does come, it won't be caught unprepared. At this point, it's safe to say that the Beijing military city is more than just a mystery buried beneath the mountains. It's a message, a cold, calculated signal sent from China to every potential adversary watching from orbit, sea, or satellite. A message that says, China is not preparing for war the way the West expects. It's preparing to survive it and win what comes after. While others invest in speed and spectacle, hypersonics, lasers, and space planes, China is investing in endurance, in resilience, in the terrifying question no one wants to ask. What happens when the missiles stop flying and the surface is gone? The Beijing military city seems built to answer that. If this video shook your understanding of how nations prepare for total war, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still thinks power is only projected upward. Let's hear what you think. Is China's underground
misunderstood regions. The Pamir Today's story takes us to one of the world's most remote and misunderstood regions, the Pamir Plateau, a place once considered lost to history, but now at the heart of a 21st-century geopolitical transformation. Few expected that when this land was peacefully returned to China, it would reveal a treasure trove of strategic resources, instantly turning this high-altitude frontier into a hotbed of global attention. Let's unravel this fascinating story, one that spans centuries of imperial conflict, cold diplomacy, and quiet triumph. The Pamir Plateau, often referred to as the roof of the world, sits at the intersection of Central and South Asia, where modern-day China, Tajikistan, and Afghanistan converge. Towering above 4,000 meters, the region has long been isolated by its unforgiving terrain. Permafrost, snow-laden ridgelines, and scarce infrastructure made it one of the least accessible areas on Earth. Yet historically, this land was never a void. It served as a vital artery of the ancient Silk Road and a meeting point for civilizations from the east and west. During the Western Han Dynasty, the legendary envoy Zhang Qian laid the foundation for Sino-Central Asian ties by traveling through this area. In the Tang Dynasty, China further extended its administrative presence by establishing the Anqi Protectorate to safeguard trade and influence across the region. Despite its strategic and symbolic significance, the Pamirs became collateral damage during the great power rivalries of the 19th century. In 1864, weakened by internal decline and external pressure, the Qing Empire signed the Treaty of Tarbagatai with Tsarist Russia, ceding over 440,000 square kilometers of northwestern territory. While the Pamirs remained nominally Chinese, the Russians began asserting control. By 1892, Russian forces had occupied over 1,100 square kilometers in the eastern Pamirs. China's response. A dotted line on a map and diplomatic silence, helpless in the face of growing imperialist aggression. For decades, the region disappeared from active Chinese governance. Under Soviet control, the area was militarized, yet underdeveloped. When Tajikistan became independent in 1991, it inherited these neglected borderlands, struggling with political instability, economic hardship, and limited capacity to govern such rugged terrain. But China never forgot. Archived in China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs were yellowed maps, imperial edicts, and Qing military logs, concrete records indicating historical jurisdiction over the Pamirs. Even a satellite analysis was conducted to align historical claims with modern geography. China's approach wasn't to contest the border militarily, but to slowly build a watertight legal and diplomatic case, while extending a hand of cooperation. By 2011, after nearly 2 decades of low-profile negotiations, China and Tajikistan signed a border agreement. Tajikistan formally acknowledged China's claim to 1,158 square kilometers of the eastern Pamirs. Crucially, this wasn't a forced handover. China refrained from threats or coercion. Instead, the return was secured through diplomacy, documentation, and promises of shared development. And that's where the real surprise began. Soon after the agreement was signed, Chinese geological teams were dispatched to the plateau. In 2018, a group of frostbitten surveyors carrying drilling rigs into the highlands expected little more than barren rock. What they found was anything but. At a depth of 300 meters, exploratory drills struck lithium. Not just trace amounts, but an extensive vein with industrial-scale reserves. Lithium, the lifeblood of modern batteries, is the key component in electric vehicles, energy storage systems, and mobile devices. With global demand soaring due to the green transition, this discovery couldn't have been more perfectly timed. But lithium was just the beginning. The region was soon found to harbor rare earth elements, critical for producing advanced electronics, military radar systems, and fiber optic cables. Among the rarest was promethium-based alloys, used in aerospace and 5G infrastructure. Then came the gold, over 300,000 tons in preliminary estimates, valued at more than 1.2 trillion yuan based on current prices. News of the discoveries reverberated globally. The Wall Street Journal called it a geoeconomic windfall. Western analysts remarked that China had acquired, through diplomacy, what many countries would have fought wars over. In Tajikistan, public opinion was mixed. Some citizens expressed regret, saying they would never have agreed to return the land if they had known about the resources beneath it. However, China had anticipated such sentiment. The agreement included a clause granting Tajikistan 3% of the annual mining profits. Additionally, China undertook major infrastructure projects, including a 2,100 kilometers road connecting Dushanbe to the Pamir region. Travel time was reduced by 3 days, saving the Tajik economy billions annually in freight and logistics costs. But more than just roadways and royalties, China built hospitals, schools, and hydropower plants across eastern Tajikistan, quietly winning hearts and minds through action rather than slogans. The true power of this strategy lies in contrast. A century ago, China was forced to watch as foreign powers carved up its territory. Today, through archival persistence, patient diplomacy, and a long-term development strategy, it has reclaimed what was once lost, without bloodshed, without headlines. The transformation is profound. Lithium from Pamir now feeds China's booming battery factories in Qinghai. Rare earths support tech hubs in Sichuan. Gold reserves underpin industrial expansion. And perhaps most symbolically, former Qing military outposts, destroyed by Russian forces in the 19th century, have been rebuilt as patriotic education sites. In 2025, the region welcomed its first solar-powered drone station and charging grid, signaling a shift toward sustainable high-altitude development. Along the new Belt and Road Trade Corridor, mining trucks now pass herds of yaks beneath snow-capped peaks, an image as surreal as it is symbolic. Yet challenges persist. Climate change is rapidly reshaping the Pamir ecosystem. Rising temperatures have accelerated glacier melt, caused river levels to surge, and degraded vast swaths of pastureland. Wildlife is losing habitat, and local communities are witnessing their ancestral lands change before their eyes. The fragile alpine ecology means environmental restoration is costly. Around 500 yuan must be spent to restore every ton of disturbed earth. These issues underscore a critical truth. Economic development in regions like the Pamirs must be paired with environmental stewardship. China has begun piloting sustainable mining protocols here, deploying AI systems to monitor ecological impact and using green energy in remote operations. But more must be done. Occasionally, voices in Tajikistan question whether the agreement signed by previous governments remains valid. Yet those voices tend to fade when weighed against the tangible benefits China continues to deliver: medical aid, energy access, and infrastructure that connects isolated communities to the rest of the country. The real takeaway: China's approach in the Pamirs exemplifies a broader principle. Great powers don't always need to make noise to make an impact. Instead of boasting about reclaimed lands, China quietly integrates them, turning neglected highlands into energy hubs, trade corridors, and environmental testing grounds. Today, the Pamirs aren't just a symbol of restored sovereignty. They are proof of what patient diplomacy, economic cooperation, and historical awareness can achieve in a world often ruled by short-term calculation. Once considered a forgotten corner of the empire, the Pamirs now anchor a new era of regional connectivity. As China and Central Asia deepen integration through the Belt and Road Initiative, these lands, once lost and overlooked, have become bridges to Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. And that's the quiet power of modern China, not just reclaiming history, but reshaping the future. Thanks for watching. If you found today's
When Trump says you have no cards, he should realize China has a lot of cards. You want to treat China as an enemy, then you will get an enemy in China. We will cut off all these supplies to you, and we will never trade in any meaningful way rare earth with the Americans. What President Trump and his administration are doing is a global trade war. It is a global tariff war against mankind, against the world. I feel very sorry for the Americans. They do not need to see their living standards being ripped off, being eroded by all these tariffs. He doesn't know what he's really doing. He probably never went to a grocery store.
You may not know his name, but the man you just heard has rattled governments, infuriated diplomats, and gone viral across 4 continents. He's not a general, not a spy, not even a politician, but his words have echoed through CNN's, BBC, Fox News, and Al Jazeera. He's called an unofficial spokesman for Xi Jinping, a media warrior for modern China. To some, he's a patriotic genius. To others, he's the propaganda machine personified. From Wall Street to the United Nations, from translating Deng Xiaoping to challenging Western journalists, Victor Gao isn't just explaining China, he's defending it. But how did a farm boy from Suzhou become Beijing's loudest voice abroad? He was born Victor Jikai Gao in 1962 in the city of Suzhou, a water town steeped in tradition, recovering from the trauma of Mao's Cultural Revolution. Like millions of Chinese youth, his early years were defined by scarcity and silence. But even as a child, Gao stood out, not for defiance, but for intellect. And in 1977, something remarkable happened. That year, the Chinese government reinstated the Gaokao, the National University Entrance Exam, after it had been suspended during the revolution. Gao wasn't yet finished with high school, but he argued his case and convinced local officials to let him take it anyway. He passed, and that single decision to raise his hand when he wasn't supposed to launched a journey few could imagine. Gao earned his BA in English at Soochow University in 1981, then a master's at Beijing Foreign Studies University in 1983, just as China was entering a new chapter under Deng Xiaoping. And it was there, at the intersection of language and power, that the young Victor Gao found himself face to face with history. In his early 20s, Gao was appointed as Deng Xiaoping's English interpreter, a role reserved for the most trusted and fluent young minds. He didn't just translate words, he translated worldview. Between 1983 and 1988, Gao would interpret for China's most powerful man and represent Beijing at the United Nations Secretariat in New York. He was quite literally the voice of China's reform era, before the world knew his name. It's easy to overlook the translator, but history often hides its sharpest minds behind the curtain. In 1989, as tanks rolled through Tiananmen Square, Victor Gao quietly left China. While the West imposed sanctions and froze diplomatic ties, Gao re-emerged, not in Beijing, but in New Haven, Connecticut. He was admitted to Yale University, the Ivy League's crown jewel, for not 1, but 2 graduate degrees, political science and law. Behind the scenes, a powerful name helped open those doors. Henry Kissinger, the U.S. Secretary of State who brokered China's opening to the world, personally recommended Gao for Yale. It was a symbolic passing of the torch, from the architect of U.S.-China détente to one of its most promising protégés. By 1993, Gao had completed both his degrees. 1 year later, he passed the New York State Bar, making him part of an elite club, Chinese-born, U.S.-licensed lawyers fluent in both law codes and both ideologies. He worked at the United Nations Secretariat in New York throughout the late 80s, a time when Sino-American tensions were high and trust was scarce. In those rooms, Gao wasn't just translating positions. He was absorbing power structures, understanding how the West debated, legislated, and maneuvered behind closed doors. Was Victor Gao preparing to bridge 2 worlds, or to choose one over the other? To some, he was becoming an internationalist. To others, a future strategist. But when Gao returned to China in the late 1990s, he didn't go back to diplomacy. He went into money. The Cold War was over, China was changing, and Victor Gao was no longer just a translator. He was becoming something else. After Yale and the UN, Gao entered the world of high finance. He joined Morgan Stanley as an investment banker, navigating capital markets instead of foreign ministries. But Gao wasn't just chasing profits. He was positioning himself inside the machinery of policy and power. In 1999, he became a policy advisor to the Securities and Futures Commission of Hong Kong, a role that required both technical precision and diplomatic finesse. It was here that Gao's unusual blend of talents, legal, financial, diplomatic, began to attract attention, not just as an operator behind the scenes, but as a thinker. Through the 2000s, he took on leadership roles as director of the China National Association of International Studies and executive director of the Beijing Private Equity Association. Yet still, he remained largely unknown to the public until he joined a think tank that would give him a platform. The Center for China and Globalization, or CCG, was founded in 2008 to help China explain itself to the world. Victor Gao quickly rose through its ranks. Today, he serves as vice president, shaping China's outward narrative at a time of geopolitical friction. He also chaired the National Organization Committee for the 2024 World Gas Conference, a rare crossover between Chinese energy strategy and global diplomacy. It was a full-circle moment, from UN halls to Wall Street, from Hong Kong's markets to China's think tank elite. He had moved from translation to policy influence, but the world still didn't know his name. He had the resume of a diplomat, the credentials of a Wall Street lawyer, and the connections of a man who once interpreted for Deng Xiaoping. But it wasn't until Victor Gao stepped in front of the camera that the world truly noticed him. From Doha to London to New York, Gao began appearing on global broadcasts, defending China's foreign policy, trade agenda, and political model. Fluent, composed, and razor-sharp, he spoke not with slogans, but with case law, history books, UN charters. His style was legalistic, methodical, as if each debate were a courtroom and he, the lead counsel for Beijing. This wasn't wolf warrior diplomacy in uniform. It was diplomacy in a tailored suit and a baritone voice. His delivery, calm, his arguments, aggressive. The contrast made him impossible to ignore. In 2009, Gao published an op-ed in the New York Times. It was titled China's Heart of Gold, a plea for understanding, a defense of China's intentions. But over the next decade, something changed. The conciliatory tone faded, and a harder edge took shape. No longer just interpreting China to the world, he began confronting the world on China's behalf. Critics call him a propagandist. State media calls him a truth teller. But the real question may be more complex. As Victor Gao evolving or being shaped into a geopolitical tool? Victor Gao didn't seek controversy, but controversy found him again and again. Armed with fluent English and a courtroom tone, he became Beijing's most visible defender, even when the world pushed back. When protesters in Hong Kong demanded democracy in 2014, Gao dismissed them as agitators. When Beijing passed the sweeping national security law in 2020, he hailed it as long overdue. To critics, he was justifying repression. To Chinese state media, he was restoring order. But perhaps nowhere was Gao more provocative than Taiwan. In 2021, he warned that China could use any means necessary to take back the island. And in a rare moment of ethnic targeting, Gao singled out Taiwanese citizens of Japanese descent. In 2021, when Australia announced its nuclear submarine deal with the US and UK, Gao erupted. The backlash was swift. Australian media described him as menacing, pointing to his increasingly combative tone. Gao did not apologize. He repeated the threat in a second interview, but even longtime observers were stunned by what came next. As the pandemic raged, Gao echoed a fringe narrative that COVID-19 may not have started in Wuhan, but at a US military facility. Fort Detrick, no evidence, just assertion timed with official Chinese messaging. And then, in 2025, he said this, quote, "Everything north of the Ganga River belongs to China. It was more than a statement, it was a spark. In India, it was branded offensive historical revisionism. In China, netizens celebrated. Some called it a masterstroke. They dubbed the imagined boundary the Victor Gao line. One man, countless microphones, and a trail of global outrage." Victor Gao doesn't just argue, he engineers sentences designed for confrontation, distraction, or control. Let's break down his three signature rhetorical tactics, the ones that made him a favorite on news panels and a lightning rod for backlash. Starting with his most famous line, it's short, provocative, viral.
Yeah, and China will lose the US market, which, as I've said, is 15%.
We don't care. We don't care. China has been here for 5,000 years. Most of the time, there was no United States, and we survived.
This is rhetorical judo, shrinking modern criticism by inflating ancient legitimacy. It evokes pride and deflects accountability. When cornered on human rights, Gao often refuses to concede. Instead, he pivots fast and talks over his opponent.
You've called Uyghurs in China's Xinjiang province your brothers and sisters. How do you feel about the fact that at least 500,000, some say more, brothers and sisters are being in camps by the Chinese government?
Many. The Uyghurs are a proud ethnic group, one of the 56 ethnic nationalities in China. The Uyghurs, as far as I'm concerned, are my true brothers and sisters. I know many of them. I travel to Xinjiang regularly, and I talk to many of the Uyghurs. If anyone is serious about accusing China of practicing mass injustice to the Uyghurs, give me the evidence.
The goal here isn't resolution, it's destabilization. By the time the host regains control, the narrative has already shifted. These tactics aren't accidents. They're crafted for speed, soundbite, and strategic ambiguity. But bold words create enemies. For every panel that praises his composure, another op-ed slams his spin. For every nationalist who calls him a diplomatic fighter, there's a journalist who calls him dangerous. By the mid-2020s, Victor Gao was no longer just a policy wonk or legal mind. He had become a media presence. He wasn't a government official. He didn't carry a military rank, but he appeared everywhere. Clips featuring Victor Gao routinely racked up tens of thousands of views. Some went viral, others sparked entire media cycles. But visibility wasn't his only asset. In China, state-aligned outlets praised him as a diplomatic fighter. After the India Ganges remark, Chinese social media embraced the controversy. What began as a geopolitical insult became internet culture. The phrase, the Victor Gao line, turned into a meme, and memes turned people into symbols. On forums, users called him a master of debate, a one-man foreign policy powerhouse. At home, the think tank he helped lead, the Center for China and Globalization, rose in prominence. Its panels, reports, and white papers began appearing in G20 policy briefings, Belt and Road dialogues, and Western academic citations. Gao wasn't just representing Chinese views. He was shaping how China explained itself to the world. To some, he's a PR face. To others, he's a rhetorical fist. But whichever side you land on, one thing is clear: Victor Gao made sure he would be heard. After 4 decades in law, finance, diplomacy, and debate, one question remains. Does Victor Gao believe what he says? How does a man, educated at Yale, trained in New York law, transform into a global firebrand for a government that censors the very freedoms he once studied? Is it conviction or something else entirely? Here's what most don't know. Victor Gao is not a member of the Chinese Communist Party. Instead, he belongs to the China Zhigong Party, a so-called satellite party. These minor parties don't oppose the CCP. They echo it. Their purpose is to simulate pluralism without challenging the system. So the question changes. Is Victor Gao trapped in the system, or is he thriving because of it? He walks a rare line, trusted by Beijing, respected by foreign media, legally trained in America, but rarely straying from China's official narrative. Maybe the truth is this: in modern China, surviving the system means speaking its language, even if you were once fluent in another. In one of his most quoted interviews, Gao made his position clear. Quote, "If anyone thinks China's rise can be stopped, they are indulging in fantasy.
Two Chinese universities have made some amazing breakthroughs when it comes to curing diabetes, with some amazing news about a very possible cure. But Big Pharma in the West, which is profit-driven and cares more about money than health, is not happy. I'll tell you all about these cures and why only a country like China can make them a reality. Also today, China's first ever homemade aircraft carrier, the Shandong, sailed into Hong Kong recently, but one American from CNN watching on from a tiny boat wasn't exactly very happy. And as the Dalai Lama celebrates his 90th birthday with fake platitudes of peace and love, I'll give you a quick reminder about why he's a liar. Let's go beyond the propaganda. This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Borham here in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. I'm back from a week away in Xizang, or Tibet as you may know it, where I was filming my upcoming short documentary, 7 Days in Xizang. I had a very enlightening time there where I visited Lhasa and the region's second largest city, Urkadzi, to find out how life is for Tibetan people today as compared to the old Tibet, where 95% of the population were slaves living in a state of perpetual hunger. That documentary will be out sometime in the next few weeks, so keep an eye out. And that is the perfect segue into today's first story, the 90th birthday of the Dalai Lama, who somehow receives almost 100% uncritical adulation from the West, who have this idea in their mind of the old Tibet as some kind of paradise, a heaven on earth, when the reality was anything but. For some context, the Dalai Lama left China in 1959 after a failed uprising, and he hasn't been back since. Yesterday, for his 90th birthday, he spoke to an adoring and uneducated Western audience about love and compassion, when he knows full well that Tibet, under his leadership, was an absolute hellhole. Firstly, around 95% of Tibetans then were serfs and slaves, literally owned by their masters, the 5% Buddhist elite, which consisted of high-ranking monks and nobles and so on. 95% of the population were tied to their owners, often literally, and had no free lives of their own. They either worked the land for their owners' benefit or slaved away making products that were sold without pay. Now, when I was in Xizang last week, I interviewed this lovely lady who was born a slave and was only freed from living in a tiny, dark pigsty at the age of 8 when the Dalai Lama fled and the Tibetan people could finally be liberated. Now, it's exactly because of their liberation and the end of the Dalai Lama's hideous theocratic feudalism that the people's livelihoods increased dramatically. The average life expectancy of the Tibetan people climbed from just 35 years of age in 1950 to 72 years of age in 2020. That's an increase of more than double. So whenever anyone shouts, "Free Tibet," you can have a big laugh. The Tibetan people were freed decades ago. Now, I talk all about it in my new book, the Wu Mao Handbook, 20 Anti-China Lies Debunked, which you can get on Amazon. Just go to your local Amazon website and search the Wu Mao Handbook. China's first ever homemade aircraft carrier, the Shandong, sailed into Hong Kong harbour last week to open to the public for the first time ever. 2,000 free tickets were snapped up almost instantly for tours of the 315-metre-long, 70,000-tonne carrier, allowing Hong Kong locals to be the first on board. The Shandong can carry up to 44 aircraft, including 32 J-15 fighters, plus helicopters. While Hong Kong residents were extremely excited, a lone CNN reporter on a dinghy was lamenting about how it's been years since an American aircraft carrier has been seen there. Let's take a look.
This is a pretty rare thing to see up close. The Chinese aircraft carrier Shandong, one of the largest weapons in China's military arsenal, at the start of a 5-day visit to the port city of Hong Kong. It is more than 3 football fields long. It can carry more than 40 aircraft. Many of them are J-15 fighter jets, the kinds that are currently on the deck of the aircraft carrier. And during flight operations, those jets, some of which you can see on the deck of the aircraft carrier, they would launch off of that sloped ski jump bow of the vessel. Around 7 years ago, I was in a small boat in this same harbor looking at a very different aircraft carrier. It was the USS Ronald Reagan making its own visit to Hong Kong. In the years since then, relations between Beijing and Washington have sharply deteriorated, and we haven't seen a US Navy ship here in many years.
LOL. Here's an idea. How about American military ships stay out of Chinese waters and the American government concentrate on making their own country better? And of course, that would mean slashing military spending dramatically and spending that money improving the lives of ordinary Americans. Wouldn't that be a noble idea? Last up today, Chinese researchers have made significant breakthroughs in developing cures for type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and the West's big pharma are not happy. Firstly, last year, scientists in Shanghai from Changzhen Hospital, the Center for Excellence in Molecular Cell Science under the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and Renji Hospital were able to effectively cure a man of type 2 diabetes. The South China Morning Post reported, the 52-year-old man with type 2 diabetes who needed multiple insulin injections daily was given an innovative cell transplant. He's now been insulin-free for 33 months and is not on any other medication, giving hope to other diabetes sufferers. Then researchers at Tianjin First Central Hospital were able to achieve the same thing for a type 1 diabetes sufferer. The European Medical Journal said, in a groundbreaking medical achievement, a 25-year-old woman with type 1 diabetes in China has successfully undergone a stem cell therapy that enabled her to produce her own insulin, reducing her reliance on injections. The woman was treated with stem cell-derived islet cells developed from her own fat cells, which were injected into her abdomen. This experimental treatment has allowed her to remain insulin-free for over a year since the procedure. Engineering.com explains further. This therapy takes advantage of induced pluripotent stem cell technology, a method of reprogramming adult cells to behave like embryonic stem cells. Scientists then coax these cells into becoming islet cells, which the pancreas uses to produce insulin. The process essentially rebuilds a diabetic pancreas from the inside out, without the need for donor organs, immune-suppressing drugs, or lifelong insulin therapy. Wow, that sounds absolutely amazing. And it would not only be welcome news for China's approximately 233 million diabetics, but also for diabetics around the world, if it is allowed to succeed. As engineering.com continues, Big Pharma is not happy. While the news is being celebrated in the medical community, the pharmaceutical industry is less enthusiastic. In the US alone, insulin sales generate over $20 billion annually. Companies have little incentive to promote a one-time cure when they profit from daily, lifelong treatment. And therein lies the crux, and explains why only a country like China, with a socialist outlook as opposed to a capitalist, profit-driven society, can succeed in making groundbreaking treatment available to everyone. In China, for example, Big Pharma has much less influence, allowing research for the betterment of humanity to take precedence over pure profit. A socialist country like China usually emphasizes collective welfare over individual profit, potentially enabling China to release a cure even if it disrupts pharmaceutical markets, unlike capitalist systems where shareholder value often drives decisions. In China, pharmaceutical companies, even private ones, operate under strict government oversight. This limits the ability of Big Pharma to suppress a cure for financial reasons, unlike in Western markets where lobbying and market dominance by companies like Novo Nordisk, Eli Lilly, or Sanofi could delay disruptive innovations. On top of that, China's state-backed manufacturing infrastructure could enable rapid scaling of a complex therapy like stem cell-derived islet cells, leveraging economies of scale to make it affordable. Capitalist systems would struggle if private companies prioritize high-margin markets or limit access to protect profits. I'm really crossing my fingers that China can make this happen. Who knows, maybe a cure for cancer will be next. And on that note, that will be it for
Hi, everybody. Today's work the way that it should work. And that's why BRICS should comment on that. Go ahead, and what your take on that?
Well, I listened to your conversation with Pepe yesterday, including the music in the background. So, yeah, party in Rio. And I think Pepe's observations were quite accurate as far as the statement by the BRICS countries was it did condemn these attacks, but it was not as strong and forceful as many would have liked, as perhaps Russia and Iran would have preferred. But it reflects the nature that they're not trying to seek a confrontation with the West, but at the same time, they're trying to stake out and say, hey, you don't get to tell us what to do anymore. You don't get to attack us at your whim. So I think, I ran some numbers last night, trying to say, when you look at all the countries that are now official members and those who are like partner nations, it's up to 21, I believe. Those countries combined in terms of population represent 55% of the world's population. So in terms of the majority of the people of the world, they're now part of BRICS. The GDP measured nominally, they're just roughly 30%. And you say, oh, so they're not that important economically. But when you do it with purchasing power parity, where you actually adjust according to inflation and what people can actually buy with the money that they have, all of a sudden, those 21 nations represent 45% of the world's economy in terms of purchasing power parity. And let's note that a lot of the GDP that shows up on, U.S. balance sheets, it's financial. It's money. It doesn't actually represent anything tangible and concrete. It's like Google. What can you put Google in your pocket? Yeah, we can use Google as a platform on the internet, but again, it's not something concrete, tangible that's produced. And then when you look at the G7, what percentage of the world economy they account for in terms of purchasing power parity? Well, because these are, supposedly the most advanced, most industrial countries, they're at 30%. So clearly, from a standpoint of economic power with consumers, BRICS is now in the process of surpassing the G7, and as a result of that, you saw the statements coming out of BRICS, and it was reiterated, I believe, in the speech by the Chinese foreign minister or the deputy prime minister, that, hey, these international institutions, particularly the UN, the UN Security Council, it's got to be, we need to have a revision. We can't go on with this current version of the UN Security Council, which simply reflects the colonial empire that existed at the end of World War II. And they excluded India. China is there, but France and England as being major countries, come on, they're ridiculous. They really are irrelevant countries, but because of their history and the time when the United Kingdom controlled so much of the world, dominated it as a colonial empire, exploiting other countries, gets rewarded for it by a seat in the UN Security Council. France and England ought to be booted immediately, or have one country from Europe. Let the European side, you guys choose which country do you want to represent you, and the Europeans get a voice. The Africans get a voice. the Russians get a voice, the Chinese get a voice. If you're going to have permanent members, there need to be a permanent representative, in my view, from each of the continents. But and so that's what BRICS is starting to address. Actually, I think this is coming off better than even Pepe had expected, simply because it looked like Brazil had not made the kind of detailed preparation that Russia had at Kazan last year. But it's still, I think it's starting to achieve its goals, and establishing the outlines of developing a new financial system, a way that international trade can take place without people being under the threat of the U.S. dollar. Because right now, any country that's going to trade in U.S. dollars is potentially held hostage by either having to pay tariffs or being faced with sanctions. And we saw that with the they call them the ghost ships. So Russia is now using oil tankers that are not insured by the West. They're not insured. Most of the insurance industry used to be in Great Britain. Well, now Russia can insure its own ships. They don't have to have a Western seal of approval. So that's what's starting to come apart at the seams, and by virtue of that, Trump. I think Trump actually understands it, because he's threatening any of you countries out there that are going to go with this BRICS nonsense. You're going to pay an extra 10% tariff. Thank you, Mr. President. You made our point. That's exactly the point. Cut that out. Stop being a goddamn bully.
Laurie, it seems that the situation with the SWIFT system, which we know how important it is for the communication between among the countries, but somehow Iran, Russia, I would argue Venezuela, Cuba, many countries are not able to use it because of the sanctions that the United States imposed on them. If they achieve that, Larry, that would be really a game changer. And I don't know if the administration in the United States is really prepared to deal with that, because that would hugely influence, as you've mentioned, the value of dollar. And in the near future, it's not in a long distance future, it would happen, and it would definitely influence the economy of the United States and Europe.
Well, let's understand what SWIFT is. SWIFT is essentially an email system among banks. So, you're Chase Manhattan and I'm Citicorp. And so I send a message, hey, I'm transferring, I'm putting $2,000 into your account coming from this, and it's just a messaging system for managing financial transfers between banks. And candidly, it's using old technology. I mean, it is using email in an age of instead of like text message. The Chinese have developed SIPs, which is, I think, cross-border interbank payment system. And SIPs is digital, and SIPs uses blockchain technology out of the crypto world. And it's instantaneous. So, I don't know if you're familiar with we have a system called Zelle, Z-E-L-L-E, and you can put somebody into it and send them money according to their phone number or their email address. And so then when you type it in, man, it happens within seconds. Some of the SWIFT transactions can take up to 2 days, 48 hours.
We call it PIX here in Brazil.
PIX. Okay. And but that kind of system spreading around the world. So this is, SWIFT is sort of like the old days when they say, hey, give me a typewriter. I'm going to type it on a piece of paper. and then I'm going to use a carbon copy, and then people your age and younger may not even know what carbon copy is, but you used to have these, black pieces of paper that would be inserted, so it would basically be covered with ink and would print onto another, we used to do it that way 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Now I look back on it and go, good Lord, I'm so old. I remember when we got the IBM Selectric typewriters and it had a correcting ribbon on it. Oh my God, that was revolutionary. You type and then you could make a mistake. You could backspace and cover. Now, I'm sure people who are 20 and 30 years old are looking and going, what the hell is he talking about? But that's Swift. So what an ironic name. Swift ain't so swift. It's sort of slow.
Yeah. Larry, we, as I've mentioned, one of the main topics was the attack on Russia and Iran. Do you think that these two countries would somehow change their strategy, the way that they were talking about it? But they're talking about right now in Iranian media, they're talking about that Iran wants to buy Chinese jets, Russian jets, and air defense system from Russia. It seems that somehow Iran wasn't thinking about, Larry, when I imagine the situation with the Iranian media before this attack on Iran happening, nothing about the war, nothing about buying more weapons, buying more equipment in terms of going against Israel and the United. But right now, everything has changed. The whole strategy has changed. I would assume the same way that the strategy on the part of Russians have been changing during the war in Ukraine.
Well, yes, but the change in Russia, I think, came about, 3 years ago, or a little more than 3 years ago. But it's been, I call it an awakening that, the average person, the average Russian probably went along thinking, hey, we like America, and we want to get along with them, and they weren't sitting down and looking at it as the generals of the leaders of the general staff or the intelligence agencies were looking at it, because from their standpoint they're having to think through contingencies and vulnerabilities and capabilities of what the United States presented, and what they were dealing with was not just a buildup of NATO military power and the continued expansion or movement of that military power and capability towards Russia's border, but they were also dealing with the fact that intelligence operations to destabilize countries all along Russia's southern border, so Georgia and Armenia and Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan. They tried a coup in Kazakhstan. Was it 2 years ago? So became aware that the United States was not at all interested in, it's like if you said, hey, I want to be your friend Nima, or actually you want to be my friend, and yet I'm spending all my time figuring out how I can steal from you, how I can hurt you, how I can take things from you. Who wants to be in a friendly relationship with someone like that? I'd be a despicable person. And people get mad and say, oh, why do you hate America? I do despise what we have become, what we are right now, because we are not a country that is genuinely interested in enriching others and making others successful and making others better and making others healthy. It's all about us and our consumer lust that we want to control and dominate and dictate. And that's so psychologically unhealthy. So, I think the Russian people finally came to that awareness. And when you put it into the Iranian context, I think up until these attacks over the last, hell, they should have seen it with the murder of Soleimani. But it has been, the West has not been of a mood at all to try to accommodate Iran and try to accept Iran as a legitimate government and as a legitimate country. It's all about trying to destabilize and destroy you. So, maybe as a result of this attack, that started June 13th, that the Iranian people finally awakened and said, hey, they're not our friends. Maybe up to that point, their only hope was, can we just get the economy? Can we get back to normal economic relations and, normal tourism? And no, it can't happen.
Actually, those same people who are arguing that the problem is because we are not willing to talk and negotiate with the West, they're getting weaker, Larry. They're getting drastically weaker in Iran, inside Iran. And I don't know, before coming up to this live, we were talking about the Pezeshkian. He did an interview with Tucker Carlson.
Right.
We didn't watch it so far. You didn't watch it. I didn't watch it. But we know that Pezeshkian, Larry, if I assume he's the last reformist in the Iranian establishment, and he's the last one. I would argue if the United States, if Iran and the Pezeshkian team misses the opportunity to have a better relationship with the West, that is the end. That is the end for the foreign policy of the United States toward the foreign policy of Iran towards the United States. And do you believe that, for considering that, is that going to change anything in the mind of the administration in the United States, or those people who are arguing in Iran that nothing going to come out of the talks between Iran and the United States would prevail in Iran?
Well, I've seen a couple of snippets or quotes from the interview. And actually, one of the surprising things that come out of it is Pezeshkian said the Israelis tried to kill him too. That he was at a meeting that they were that meeting site was specifically targeted, and the attack failed. I don't know. He didn't go into details as to why. But the criticisms that I'm seeing, I read some of the criticisms about the interview, what he said in the interview. So I it may or may not be accurate, but those criticisms are basically painting him, as you are describing, as too soft, too accommodating of the West. And when you realize that the Iranian Pezeshkian's government was actually seriously trying to negotiate with the West and trusting the promises. And according to Pezeshkian, the United States had promised that they wouldn't let Israel attack. And yet 2 days before they're supposed to meet for negotiations, Israel attacks. And what does Donald Trump say? He doesn't say, those damn Israelis, they told him not to do it, and I'm furious. No, I knew all about it. I knew the precise details. He bragged about it. He was happy. Joyful. Until he realized that it turned out to be, while it was a tactical success, it was a strategic disaster. And I call it a tactical success because, boy, the Israeli intelligence service showed that they could arrange the drone attack from within the country. They could get people into certain places, manipulate them so they could kill them, which they did. That they could dismantle some of the top echelon of Iran's scientific community, but they're going after the nuclear scientists. Yeah, so they did some damage, no doubt about it. And they calculated, this would cause the collapse. But strategic failure, because Iran got up off its ass after getting knocked down and immediately began hitting Israel with ballistic missiles, drones, cruise missiles, and ultimately shredded Israel's air defense system to the point that Israel no longer had protection. And there is now, as I wrote about it last week, but now there's corroborating evidence that Iran really put a hurt on Israel. It hit key defense sites, both military, intelligence, as well as economic and scientific. So the strategic loss now, from the standpoint of the West, is that before they had eyes and ears on Iran's nuclear program, knew exactly what Iran was doing because they had penetrated IAEA. Now they don't. The IAEA is booted out, and it's now, I guess if Pezeshkian is allowed to do what he wants to do, then he's, frankly, I think he is far too accommodating of the West. But we'll see what the other elements within the Iranian government, say, no, we're not going back down that road, are going to harden up. And as you said, the Alexander Mercouris has done a pretty good analysis over the Iranian efforts to get the JC-10, the plane out of the combat jet out of China, as well as the S-35 from Russia. And there had been a previous perception that it was Russia and China that were delaying those, but it wasn't. It was just the opposite. It was Iran. Iran has had ample opportunity, but has been dragging its feet. And we saw some of the Iranian reluctance to move forward with any closer military defense relationships by the simple fact that after that strategic agreement was signed on January 17th, it took Iran, the Majlis, another 2 or 3 months to approve it. So, now it looks like Iran's awake. Holy smokes, they're not our friend. Okay, well, welcome to reality, boys and girls.
What do we know, Larry, about the Chinese fighter jets in the war between Pakistan and India? They've used them. And are they capable? Are they that good? Are they, I don't know, how is that possible to see if Iran buys these sort of fighter jets? Are they going to improve the Iranian the Iranian position?
Personally, I think spending money on fighter jets at this point is silly. It's old technology. It's like saying, God, man, what kind of saddle do I want for my car? You don't need a saddle. When you're riding horses. What you need is advanced air defense systems that are impregnable. Air defense systems that can shoot down everything from drones to ballistic missiles. And continue to upgrade and expand your ballistic missile capability, your hypersonic missiles. That's where the offense comes. Because, candidly, these jets, the jets, they look cool. Tom Cruise makes a great movie with it, Top Gun 2. But what you can design, what these planes, these modern 5th generation planes are capable of doing, makes it impossible. Actually, if you flew it at its full capability, the human being inside it would die because of the G force you can create. And so, and a lot of the expense on these aircraft is because you got to put in systems to keep the human being alive. And then in the chance they get shot down and it can manage to eject, then you got to put a team together of, you maybe 10, 20 people with other planes and helicopters to try to go rescue them. And then they get shot down. I mean, that, in Vietnam, they had this thing with it's called Combat Search and Rescue, CSAR. And when you looked at the casualties of pilots that died when they were shot down, and then the CSAR crews that were killed or captured trying to rescue them, it was far higher, my understanding, on the combat search and rescue side. So it's like, why buy these stupid jets? I mean, like I said, it's like if you live out in the country and you got dirt roads, why buy a Lamborghini? A Lamborghini is great if you got concrete highways and flat, smooth, and you can drive. But if you're living in the rural area with where you need a 4-wheel drive vehicle, get that. That's why I said this. So those getting that kind of aircraft, it's really symbolic. It's just symbolic. Say, okay, we're closely tied together. Does not really, in my view, enhance Iran's ability to defend itself. Because let's be clear what we're talking about here. One of the reasons to have those kinds of jets is to attack other countries. And I don't think Iran wants to send the message that they're about attacking other countries. They want basically the United States and Israel to leave it the hell alone.
They would never attack another country.
Yeah. So
I understand it.
Yeah. So I think the whole thing of these 5th generation fighters, it's it's more for the benefit of those military industrial companies to enrich them and their shareholders. Now, clearly China's built it, Russia's built it because they are peers with the United States that got to match them. But candidly, there's going to come a time when you can fly those aircraft remotely. You don't need to have a pilot in them. And once you take out a pilot, the cost of building those is going to go way down.
And Ted Postal, in one of the sessions I had with him, he mentioned that air defense systems are so capable of shooting down these fighter jets. They're so easy to get.
Yes.
It.
Yeah.
And Larry, do we know if Iran had or has S-400 or did they buy it or
no, they haven't. They reportedly turned Russia down in the past. Now maybe they're trying to get it now. Andrei Matyanov has pointed out that there was one S-400 and one S-300 in Iran, and those were at the Bashir nuclear power facility in southern Iran, because the Russians had 200 employees working there, and so they stationed their air defense system there, and then they told Israel and the United States, stay away. Don't even come close here or else. So, neither Israel nor the United States dared to attack that site.
Israel attacked Yemen again.
Mm-hmm.
Seems that
Yemen responded and attacked Israel, hit them with hit Ben Gurion Airport, is my understanding, in the last 6 hours.
Yeah. And do you feel that as time goes by and somehow we are witnessing the calmness and I don't know if we can go, the cessation between Iran and Israel, is Israel going to shift it to Yemen? It seems that they have to attack someone. They don't care about it. There has to be some sort of attack. I remember that one of the U.S. generals, I don't remember his name. He said that the list of countries to be overthrown the next 7.
Wesley Clark.
Wesley Clark.
Yeah.
And he said, when I asked why we should attack, said, we have a good military. We have to show how big we are, how powerful. It seems that Israel feels that way, that they have to attack someone.
Yeah, it's the hallmark, the hallmark of insecurity. It is. It's really a sign of weakness on the part of Israel. But these attacks on Yemen is just a reminder that Israel does not have unlimited military power. It is entirely dependent upon what the West supplies. Now they did launch aircraft, 60 aircraft to go bomb the port. I think it was Hodeidah in Yemen.
Yeah,
okay. And frankly, Yemen needs to get some decent air defense. And maybe they can convince the Chinese or Russians to help them. And up to this point, I think maybe Russia has wanted to avoid escalating the situation. But if the United States continues to facilitate and enable the war in Ukraine, I don't know why. What reason there could be for Russia to continue to exercise that kind of restraint. But in spite of that, Israel's, they're going to launch these aircraft, they're going to bomb, and they're not defeating the Houthis. And the Houthis, they just sunk another ship, a Greek tanker that was owned by an Israeli, and it's sunk yesterday. And they've launched, I know they've launched at least 2 missiles in the last 24 to 36 hours. And the Israelis are finding the same problem. The Houthis have these mobile launchers, and finding those mobile launchers and taking them out is tough. It's not easy. Israel's, I don't think Israel's going to give up on its quest to destroy Iran either. But I did see that even the Zionist crazies like Bezalel Smotrich, he was saying today that, well, we didn't know that the Houthis could have so many missiles underground. A bunch of arrogant pricks. Jeez.
Yeah. They talk, Larry, at the summit, BRICS summit, they talk about the situation in Syria.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main concerns on their part is how this could change the security of the region. It's not just about Syria itself, it's about the whole region. And these people are so connected. You talk about China, the southern part of Russia, Iran is somehow, these countries are really feeling some sort of threat to their security, and they're part of BRICS. That's why I think the case of Syria is so important for them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that they're gonna decide about, they're gonna pick a position, somehow a decisive position toward the situation in Syria? So far, they didn't move that much. But the way that you perceive it at the BRICS summit, is that going to change in your opinion?
No. There's not a lot BRICS can do about that at the moment. It would just, if anything, to get embroiled in that, that's just, you're asking for more trouble, because one, you're fighting. Here's the West, who is now supporting, funding a bona fide Sunni terrorist, a guy that was part of ISIS, al-Nusra, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the very, quote, war on terror that the United States claims to have been fighting for the last 30 years. We're now backing that very kind of person, number one. And then you've got Israel, who's expanding its control up into the Golan Heights, and bombing at will in Syria as it wishes. and then you've got Turkey, who's actually the big problem, because Turkey wants to take control of Syria and expand its empire. So here's Turkey meddling in Syria, meddling in Azerbaijan, and basically also facilitating, helping Ukraine. I mean, Turkey's a real problem. And here's Turkey talking about becoming a member of BRICS, but it's not really. It's almost, it wants to get into sabotage it, is my view. So with all those complexities, that's one that BRICS doesn't want to get. They can make a comment about it, say, "Oh, we think it's a terrible thing," but don't take the bait. The Syria situation is going to have to be sorted out by someone else, not BRICS. At least not now.
We had in the last 4 days, we had interviews with the soldiers, with Israeli soldiers, talking about the experience they had in Gaza. And we had American lawmaker Dershowitz defending Israel's attitude, saying that the way that you defeat Hamas is killing civilians.
Yeah. He's a monster. I mean, Dershowitz is a monster. With
how can you say it?
Look, what do you expect of a guy where there's serious allegations about him being engaged with pedophilia? And he even admitted, "Oh, I was on Jeffrey Epstein's island. I kept my underwear on and got a massage."
I'm looking at that.
Sure you did, buddy. So he said, he's alleged to have abused children. So what's the difference with killing them? I mean, what a monstrous thing to think. And some of these Israeli soldiers, I've talked about this before, that when the German army went into Ukraine and Poland, and in particular in Ukraine, though, when they started rounding up Jews and then executing women and children, they'd strip them naked. It's the German officers, the Wehrmacht, not the SS, but the regular army, were writing back saying, "Hey, this can't keep going on. It's diminishing the fighting skill, the fighting ability of my soldiers, because the soldiers that still had a conscience were so emotionally distraught they were having psychological breakdowns. Some were committing suicide." Well, lo and behold, what's happening in Israel? I just saw a picture of this one soldier. He went out and set himself on fire and left a note explaining that he could not get the images of the dead children and women that he had killed out of his mind. And you're seeing that more IDF personnel are coming forward with similar accounts. How they've been ordered to shoot children who don't represent a threat, just shoot them. And so this is, the Zionism in my book is evil. When they call it satanic, let's call it satanic. There's nothing good about it. It needs to be eliminated, in my view, because all it does is promote this kind of that we have the right to kill you because you're not part of us mentality. It's one of those kinds of ideologies.
Is the public opinion in the West somehow understanding what's going on with the Zionism and the consequences of this sort of attitude that many people in the Congress in the United States, high-ranked people, they're so proud, they say, "I'm Zionist, I'm proud to be a Zionist."
Yeah.
You remember Trudeau, before getting out of power in Canada, said, "I am a Zionist."
Yeah.
I don't know, somehow they feel that it's an honor to be a Zionist.
Yeah, no, it is. The political class, at least in the West, is still largely in bed with the Zionist mentality, and the money's flowing. And I just saw even in England the other day, an 83-year-old woman. She's a pastor, and was speaking out against what Israel was doing to the Palestinians, and she got arrested. In the United States today, if you public, I could never again be allowed on television, on the regular cable channels or news stations, because of my views about the Zionists and their genocidal war against the Palestinians. Oh my God, you can't say that. But I wrote a piece the other day trying to lay out that, trying to help people outside of the United States, outside of the West, understand the Western mentality, how it's all caught up with this religious nonsense. That the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, that those were written by, that God was speaking, Moses was writing, and that's this sacred, holy word of God. And you can't now, Greg, you can go even among Christians, you'll find that they don't believe that, but actually, if you don't believe it, then the Jews have no claim on that land. That's the bottom line. Because either you got to believe this mythological story that God said, I like you people better than all these other people. You serve me. You be my slaves. And then you can go in and kill all these people, get rid of them. That's your land. But you got to worship me. It's like a narcissistic cult. The theology that undergirds it. But I suddenly realized I was talking to this young guy out of, he's Indian, but he's in Beijing right now, Jyotishman. And it suddenly dawned upon me that the average person in India, the average person in China, they don't know much at all about Christianity or Judaism and the whole story, that whole milieu. In Brazil, yeah, because you're raised within was traditionally a Catholic country, or at least Christianity is pervasive. And you got that throughout Central and South America, so that they sort of get it. Which actually goes to explain one of the reasons why in the past, like countries like Nicaragua would be real close with Israel. Certain countries, but it is this Zionist ideology represents such a fundamental threat, and that any attempt to discuss it or explain it leads to you getting attacked, shut down, jailed in some cases. So it is we're held hostage to it here in the West.
Vladimir Putin has announced that they could destroy the Ukrainian $2 billion worth of Ukrainian equipment by they've been using drones to go against these targets. And on the other hand, we're hearing from the Europeans, they're talking about building drones and producing drones for Ukraine. How is that going? Do you think that the United States would somehow support this idea of producing more drones for Ukraine? And since we know the manpower is not that much capable of going against Russia anymore, they're short of manpower, and the only thing that I would assume would be drones to somehow attack Russia.
Well, the numbers just don't add up. Let me put it that way. Nobody in Europe, Germany, France, England combined, have an industrial capability where they could sit down and turn out massive amounts of drones, and then have to and actually, I'd say candidly that they lack the scientific depth to make the innovations that are required because as you've watched the evolution of the drone warfare over the course of the last 3 years, 5 months, they keep getting more sophisticated. Actually, right now, Russia has deployed satellites, and those satellites are actually able to control drones. So now it's no longer it's a way that it can counter some of the electronic warfare countermeasures. But they've come up with using fiber optic drones as well. So yeah, drone technology represents a potential threat, but that's what Putin's talking. They're destroying it. So the West can't produce it, and Ukraine doesn't have they don't have a secure site anywhere in Ukraine where they can set up a factory and build. They'd have to dig underground. And candidly, trying to put together an underground facility right now, they're going to run out of time. They don't have time because of what Russia is doing. But it's across the board Russia's advantage with its industrial production. So right now, the United States is not building a brand new tank from scratch. It builds the M1 Abrams, takes the shells that were built, it refurbishes them. It takes them 2 years to refurbish one of those tanks. Russia is building a brand new T-90 tank in 1 month. Okay, so what? So just, I mean, it boggles the mind, that kind of difference. But it's not just there. Artillery shells. And I had someone say, well, artillery, just because a country can produce weapons doesn't mean anything. Oh, yeah. And it means a lot. The fact that Russia can walk and chew gum at the same time. They have dramatically ramped up their military production, and yet they continue to produce consumer goods, and the people, the lives of the people have not been impacted like they would be in total war. That's the difference between special military operation and total war. Because in total war, you go back during World War II in the United States, for example, hey, nobody bought a brand new car for like 3 years because the car factories were completely converted into producing Jeeps, tanks, trucks, military transport trucks. The food, there were, had coupons. Gas was also, so if you're going to go to war, you end up having those restrictions. Well, Russia hasn't done that. They're not going that far because they think they've got this in hand, and I think they do.
We talk about the possibility of having a third party in the United States before, during the presidential election. How do you find it right now? Do you think that Elon Musk would be able to somehow shake the political system in the United States? He literally said both parties are the same. They don't offer anything different.
Yeah.
That's why he's doing this.
Well, he's not the first that's tried. I mean, there's the Libertarian Party, is the most prominent example, and they haven't been able to get much traction. It would fracture. Let's put it this way: the U.S. political environment is already fractured. It's already divided. This would increase the division, but I understand why he's saying it now. So some accusers saying, well, he's just upset that he didn't get his subsidies. Oh, maybe that's an element. But when you vote for a party that claims, okay, yeah, we're going to get this government spending under control, then they turn around and jack up the budget to, the defense budget goes up to over $1 trillion. It's like, so you lied. And you know, they come up with excuses. Oh, well, this is national security and this, that, and the other thing. The political parties are not responsive. I know that Trump is created a bit of a problem for himself with the tariffs. One of my neighbors, who he sells sports equipment, he manufactures it, but the manufacturing is done in China. And so, you know, baseball bats, hockey sticks, lacrosse sticks, that kind of thing. And he's a Trump supporter. But as we were talking the other night, he said, man, these tariffs are killing me. He said, we got hit with $150,000 additional tariff that we had to pay on, you know, it was like a $2 million shipment. And he said, we hadn't budgeted for that. And so now he's got to figure out, you know, if they're going to raise prices, but it's affecting him. So, you know, that's where Trump's turned out to be his own worst enemy in some of this.
Before wrapping up, Larry, what are we going to see from Donald Trump, considering the BRICS summit? One of the main topics that was discussed so far in the summit was the tariffs and the way that the United States is imposing tariffs on other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Together with the war, 2 wars in the Middle East and in Ukraine. When you put these pieces together, do you feel that Donald Trump would feel some sort of pressure from BRICS and from BRICS countries on the United States that may change, that may influence his decisions in terms of dealing with Russia and Iran?
Oh, no, absolutely not. The only thing that's going to get Donald Trump's attention, just, you know, as happened with Israel's attack on Iran on June 13th, his initial expectations, like with that war, was, oh man, Israel's going to kick butt and Iran's going to collapse and it's going to be a great victory, big, you know. And then when it wasn't, he panicked. Complete change. We got to get out of this. We got to figure a way to bring this to an end. Right now, he still labors under the belief that the tariffs are working, that these countries are coming under the thumb of the United States and will do what the United States wishes, and that it's not hurting the economy. Once it becomes clear that it is having a very definite negative effect on the economy, he'll turn. You know, he'll do what he always does. He'll develop Alzheimer's disease, forget that he'd ever said what he said, and pretend that he's saying something, you know, that he's going to change his position, but then we'll pretend that was his position all along. So, but BRICS, you know, right now he's belligerent and threatening towards BRICS. He sees BRICS as a threat, and it is to Western the financial domination. But it's up to the BRICS countries to, you know, follow through and say, hey, we are going to work together. We're going to hang together and stand up against U.S. bullying.
I don't know if you saw the list of the countries who would be part of BRICS: and Belarus, Bolivia, Kazakhstan, Cuba, Indonesia, Nigeria, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Uganda, and Uzbekistan. And you look at BRICS, it's somehow the way that it's growing. I don't know when would be the moment of this breaking point, the moment that the foreign policy of the United States says it's not anymore sustainable, the position that they're taking toward the rest of the world. Because I don't know if you saw Jake Sullivan, his recent interview it was on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken. You look at the guy and the way that he's trying to make sense of the foreign policy of the United States somehow shows that he's totally delusional. He doesn't know. And this guy was in power for 4 years during the Biden administration. He was everybody in that administration. He was each and everybody. The decision that he has made was so much important for the foreign policy. And you see, when he's not in that position and talking about the foreign policy, you see how hollow and how meaningless is the argument on his part.
Well, they've made a strategic mistake. That it is true that the United States has been the most powerful economy in the world, and that we've really become the financial center of the world. And in that, we fail to look at, if you will, the fundamentals that undergird that. And what are some of those fundamentals? Okay. Are you educating your population? Are you developing, a growing body of people that are STEM graduates, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, that they're to work in this, because the world we're moving into is a high technology world, and the world where artificial intelligence is becoming more prevalent in actually running certain operations. But you still have to have people that understand the science behind that. Well, the United States is falling behind on that front. The United States is becoming less literate, not more literate. The safety in U.S. cities are becoming less safe, not more. There are some TikTok videos just showing some streets in Philadelphia. They're just filled with trash. And the guy is trying to film it and talk about it. He keeps retching. The stench is so great, it's making him throw up. And so the United States actually is in a position where we've hollowed ourselves out. Yeah, we look like we got this, grand military, and we can do, and we do have some power, but we found out we can't sustain it. And so these other countries, though, they're saying they've been abused and bullied by the United States for so long that they're finally coming together and said, we're not going to put up with this. We're not going to take it anymore. And I think the tide the tide is moving. Yeah, I can see it. A lot of people can't. But this, when I point out that 45%, you got 55. These countries represent 55% of the world population, and almost half of the world's economic activity in terms of purchasing power parity. It's a new world coming, and to the extent that the BRICS countries keep focus on that and develop the economic infrastructure for making payments and for trade, and creating alternatives to, if you will, the IMF and the World Bank, which is the bank in China. What was it? I forget the acronym on it. NDM, something like that. National Development. But that's the wave of the future. That's where it's headed.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today. Great pleasure as always.
I'm not coming back unless you have a better shirt on next time, okay?
I'm going to put it on next time.
Just tell people you were moving today, so you had to put on a work shirt. Okay, I understand. All right, my friend. You have a great day.
See you soon. Bye-bye. See you soon. Bye.
Proxy, be it the Jolani-led Syria and some have even suggested the possible deeper involvement of Azerbaijan. And I wanted to start off with this talk about Azerbaijan because it is in the news now. It appears that it's stepping up a bit the hostility, not just towards Russia but also Azerbaijan. So I just wanted to, how serious do you see these accusations? I mean, is Iran worried about Azerbaijan at the moment?
The Republic of Azerbaijan is a problem because it has a very close relationship with the Israeli regime. Erdogan in Turkey and Aliyev in Azerbaijan together collaborate a lot with Israelis. We know that oil goes from Baku through Turkey to the Israeli regime, and that there's extensive trade and business between these three countries. The Republic of Azerbaijan receives a lot of weapons from the Israeli regime. Their alliance is very close, and that is, of course, a threat to, from the Iranian perspective, a threat to the region. Azerbaijan is also very vulnerable because it is a small country. It is sandwiched between Iran and Russia, and it is Aliyev is, of course, he's the lifelong leader of the country, and he has a history of being very unpredictable. At some point, Iran was actually assisting him during the very difficult days of the country. But later on, the Americans convinced him to shift away from Iran, and he did so. Now it is believed that he is actually supporting the Israeli regime in its aggression against Iran. There is it's a widely held belief among ordinary Iranians, especially those who live near the border, that drones fly from the Republic of Azerbaijan into Iran and attack targets, including targets close to the Republic in Iran's province of eastern Azerbaijan and Ardabil and the northern provinces, and even Tehran. So things are becoming more tense. The Iranians, of course, want a peaceful Caucasus. We want our neighboring countries to live in peace because it's in everyone's interests. In the Persian Gulf region, even though all of these Arab family dictatorships are bound to the United States, but Iran doesn't want to expand the war to these areas because it's in no one's interest. It's not in Iran's interest. It's not in anyone else's interest. But if the Iranians feel that Baku is insisting on continuing this sort of cooperation with the Israelis to the detriment of the Iranian people, then I think we'll probably see a shift. We'll see a shift in Tehran's position towards Aliyev, and that could be dangerous. Dangerous for him. The popular mood in Iran is very negative towards him. And I think he underestimates how angry people in the northern provinces are, especially provinces near Azerbaijan, the Republic of Azerbaijan. So we'll have to wait and see. But President Pezeshkian was there yesterday, and I think it's clear what he was trying to do. He was trying to, because there was the ECHO conference where heads of state from ECHO members were participating, and I'm sure that he told Aliyev Iran's concerns and tried to open the door to him to to say that, look, you can have the opportunity for better relations, and you can also risk bringing about grave difficulty for yourself. So I think that's where we stand right now with Aliyev.
Yeah, well, for the Europeans and Americans, Azerbaijan always had that important position, because if you want to reach the East, and especially then Central Asia, and you want to avoid both the Russians and the Iranians, this energy corridor, if you can bring in Azerbaijan into your orbit, then not only do you access the Caspian, but you can also then extend into Central Asia, which is always in the thought in terms of this new great game as it was. But no, it's probably a wise idea to, well, given that it is sandwiched between Russia and Iran, it's probably a good idea to offer the carrot as well, in order not to trigger a security dilemma. But in terms of Syria, though, there is also chatter now about the possibility of well, Trump is removing sanctions on Syria. I have some mixed feelings. I think I think it's a good thing that the Syrian people, who usually suffer under sanctions, are relieved of this. On the other hand, this is seems to be a preparation stage to bring Jolani Syria more into the U.S. orbit and align policy interest. And could this mean Syrian involvement in a future attack on Iran?
Well, one thing that I think going back to the Republic of Azerbaijan, and that is that Mr. Aliyev, I think, misreads the current situation in the world. In the 90s, when he, at the orders of the United States, under pressure from the United States and the Europeans, when he distanced himself from Iran, that was at a time when the United States was the global superpower. That's when the United States was the hyperpower. And Europe, of course, as the close ally of the United States, was empowered as a part of that empire. But the world has changed, and the protective umbrella of the United States for Aliyev or the Europeans is not very impressive. And so, unless he rethinks his foreign policy and looks carefully at the map and what's happening in the world around him, then there could be significant trouble ahead for his country, especially, as I said, it's a small country, very dependent on oil and gas, and it does not have the ability to resist a power like Iran. And its population, a large part of the population is very sympathetic towards Iran. Most Azeris are Iranian, and he is of course, he suppresses religion in his country, and that makes him very unpopular. Many religious leaders, almost all the key religious leaders in the country, are in jail or are under some form of house arrest. And of course, his alliance with the Israeli regime, as this Holocaust is being carried out in Gaza, and as the slaughter is being carried out in Lebanon or the West Bank, the killings in Lebanon and the West Bank continue, that creates anger among the general public, as it does across the region and beyond, when people see their governments cooperating with Netanyahu and his regime. So that is an issue that I think in the days, weeks, and months ahead will have to be addressed in Baku in one form or another. But Syria, I think it's a different case, Glenn. I think Syria is, of course, the sanctions should have been removed a long time ago. These sanctions are barbaric sanctions against any people anywhere in the world. Can only be imposed by regimes that have no sense of humanity, whether it's Cuba or Afghanistan or Yemen or Syria or anywhere else, sanctions are for targeting ordinary people. There's that is the objective. To say otherwise is just to be deceptive. When they say they're targeting the government or what they like to call regimes, that's just to justify what they're doing. But the objective is to harm ordinary people. It's a war. It's a form. It's just like bombing people, but it's a silent form of murder. So that obviously is something good. Nothing. The Americans shouldn't be thanked for it. They haven't. It's like the Israelis carrying out a ceasefire in Gaza. Let's say no one should thank the regime for it if they actually do have a ceasefire. But I think Syria is falling apart. I mean, Jolani or Shara or whatever they'd like to call him, he is not going to be able to do anything positive for Syria, and I don't think that's his intention. The different groups that are aligned to him are deeply divided. There are deep differences between them. There are many thousands of foreign fighters as well. And many of these Salafists and Wahhabis, they have their own agenda. And Syria is a destroyed country. The Israeli regime, after the fall of President Assad, they went and destroyed the country's infrastructures. They've occupied key territories. And Shara is desperate. He's more interested in killing his own people or attacking the borders of Lebanon than he is to put pressure on the Israeli regime militarily and push them out of his territory. And the Israeli regime is overstretched as it is. And if there's a moment in which he could put pressure on the regime, it is now, because they mobilize everywhere and they're waging war everywhere. But he has no intention to do so. And this is something that the Iranians were predicting from day one in 2011, when Qatar and Turkey and others were supporting this dirty war on behalf of the Americans and the Israelis. The Iranians were saying from the beginning that the objective is to destroy Syria, to bring a regime to power that is obedient to the United States. And that's basically what's now happened. And many of those who supported this dirty war, I think, are waking up to the reality, except for a segment of people who've been so deep brainwashed by Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Salafists and Wahhabis. The sectarian, racist sort of people that will never change their mindset. Except for them, everyone else has recognized by now what is really going on in Syria. But I don't think that's going to do the United States any good, because the more Shara or Jolani tilts to Israel, the stronger the resistance becomes. Because what the United States and the Israelis and their regional allies, like Erdogan, Qatar, and others, succeeded in doing in the past was use sectarianism to divide the region. And that's how they weakened the resistance. But now, I think after what we saw in Lebanon, what we saw in Yemen, and the war against Iran, people across the region recognize the role that the resistance and the axis of resistance plays in supporting the people of Gaza. And if Shara or anyone else makes, but Shara in particular, makes more moves towards normalization, then more people are going to join the resistance. Those who've been opposed to the resistance because they believe the sectarian and the other narratives used against the resistance, they're going to shift. So, I've always said that the closer any countries grow to Israel, the less popular they become, and the less legitimate they become in the eyes of their own people. The only country that can get away with this sort of thing is a country like the Emirates, because the Emirates is a police state. They are so carefully monitoring everything that happens that no one in the country is going to say anything. Most people in the Emirates are foreigners. They are indentured servants, sort of any slave sort of people. Only a bit over 1 million people in that country are actually have Emirati passports. The rest are foreigners. So the control that the state has is immense. But other countries, they are always facing grave difficulty. The situation in Jordan is not good. The situation in Syria, not good. The situation, even in Saudi Arabia, people expect the Saudi government to support the Palestinian people. But if the Saudi government is seen to be tilting away from the Palestinian people, it undermines the authority of the state. So everything right now, under these circumstances, where everyone is angry and everyone is outraged, and day and night they're watching the scenes, tilting towards the Israeli regime, in a sense, strengthens the axis of resistance.
Well, in terms of the, I guess, changing map or alliance systems in the Middle East, how does the war alter the relationship between Russia and Iran? Because the Russians I spoke with, they usually made the point that Iran and Russia has these historical differences, but after the common interests and cooperations in Syria, then they saw an opportunity that this limited partnership could be advanced, build on it to create a much wider strategic partnership, especially important now in the era of the SCO, BRICS, and this Eurasian integration project where Iran will be a key partner of Russia. And I guess in this war, there's been some concerns from Moscow as well. They saw the dishonest negotiations, something they have discovered themselves many times. They saw the use of drones, which have been smuggled into their country, also happened in Iran. And Iran, they attacked the nuclear reactors. In Russia, they attacked the nuclear deterrent. So there's a lot. They see a lot of similarities. But I also hear that to what extent why has there not been more integration? And they often point towards Iran, saying that there's still a lot of distrust towards the Russians in Iran. I guess for good reasons. You can go through the 19th century, or there's been plenty of wars. So this reason for the distrust. But how do you see this partnership functioning in the wider rearrangement of the region?
Well, I've always been a supporter of Iran-Russian relations. I think I'm known for that in Iran long before it became more popular. So, I want to say that first, so that your viewers recognize where I'm coming from. The Iranians and the Russians, of course, I don't want to go into history, but Syria, since Syria, the two countries began to work more closely because both of them were concerned about the Takfiri extremists. These are tools that the United States and NATO have been using for decades, whether in Afghanistan or Pakistan, whether in Libya or in Syria, and now more recently in Iran. We saw that these Zionist collaborators inside Iran, many of them were the Salafi, Wahhabi, Takfiri, ISIS, Al Qaeda, that sort of people. They're not one single group, but a lot of them come from that sort of background, whether they're so-called refugees or the illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants, whatever term you'd like to use, or whether they were Iranian. A lot of them had that sort of background. So, and they, of course, as in Syria, they collaborate with the Israeli regime very easily. Now, in Syria, the Iranians, when East Aleppo was liberated from these extremist groups, the Iranians wanted to finish the job in Idlib, but the Russians wanted to do a deal with Erdogan. And Iran was against that, but ultimately the Russians got their way, and that was, I think, a decisive factor in bringing about the situation today in Syria. Also, in the Caucasus, the Iranians had different policies than Russia, and today I think the Russians are beginning to see that Iran was probably they were not wrong. They were probably and their understanding of the changes that were taking place in the Caucasus because of the United States and the Europeans. I think the Russians are beginning to show some concern. But I think while Iran-Russian relations have improved a lot, and they have a very strong partnership in different fields, I think the key issue right now is that Russia has 2 million Russian speakers in Israel, in Palestine. And that is a very complicated issue for the Russians. So I think, just to put it very carefully, I think right now what if there's a stumbling block in expanding the relationship between Iran and Russia in all areas, is the concern that Russia has about those 2 million people who are in Palestine and the sort of influence that they have in Russia in one form or another. So I think that it's, if anything, it's not the Iranian side. Iran, of course, you're right. Iranians do have a history with Russia. And also during the past few years, as I said, in Syria and in the Caucasus, the Iranians have not been happy with some of the policies that Russia pursued, and I think the Iranians feel vindicated that Russia, that their views were probably correct, and the role of and how NATO is going to be unrelenting in both Syria and the Caucasus. But I think that probably the only thing that holds, and again, the relationship is very good, but I think the only thing is the issue that exists between Iran and Russia today that could impede further cooperation in some areas would be the fact that Russia has 2 million citizens of its own in Palestine. Now, that doesn't mean that the relation, again, I have to stress this multiple times, the relationship is still very good. And the relationship today cannot be compared to the relationship 3.5 years ago. But I think you have to look at the population in Palestine and the number of Russian speakers that are there to better understand where some of the problems, let's say the problems that do exist, where they stem from.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. President Putin actually mentioned, he was asked about I guess, where the soft spot for Israel came in. And he did mention, well, we do have to take into account the reality of these Russian speakers. So that's an interesting point. Well, I also want to ask, so maybe it's very specific, but on in terms of the possibility of this war restarting, we see that Trump has been really specific on one word over and over again. He keeps saying we obliterated the Iranian nuclear program, and he even went after CNN saying we have to use the right word, obliterated. There's nothing left. And people have interpreted this in many ways. Some see it as merely being his usual, narcissistic, self-congratulatory, I did it, not the greatest strike in history. But others have interpreted as putting an end to the war, because by saying that it's obliterated, there's no Iranian nuclear program, then there's no more reason to fight, and Israel, needs to pull back. And so again, there's different interpretations. I'm still on the fence, to be honest. I guess this is his deliberate tactic as well, to be very ambiguous, and again, I think it's a very disruptive and dangerous policy not policy, but approach. But to be this ambiguous. But How do you interpret this? This whole, we obliterated the Iranian nuclear program.
I don't think that these two interpretations are mutually exclusive. And I think that it's probably a combination of both. Although I have no way to assess whether either the Americans and the Israelis and the Europeans, they're carrying out lots of cyber attacks in Iran. And so the Iranians, every time when these attacks become very heavy, they slow down the internet and to protect the country until they're able to deal with the attack, and then the speed goes back to normal. So over the past 3-4 days, it's been like that a lot. So should I continue?
Yes, you were saying that it's probably a combination of the both, and then it froze and went away.
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of both, and that Trump he does not want to any conflict with Iran because he knows it's not going to end well for the United States, or for the world, or for anyone. But also, it is that narcissism there too. So I think it's probably a combination of both. In fact, I think I'm sure you recall earlier Trump spoke about Netanyahu and his problems with the judiciary, and he was saying that they should leave him alone, and he's a great leader, and I think, and this is just my personal interpretation, it may be wrong, but I think that the reason why Trump wants to support Netanyahu and to put pressure on the opposition to Netanyahu is possibly because he wants Netanyahu to feel more secure so that Netanyahu will not continue expanding war. Again, I may be completely wrong, but I think because I don't see why someone like Trump would have to invest so much in this genocidal monster, because it destroys the U.S. image even further across the world. Although there's not left for the image of the United States. But I think maybe, I'm not saying that Trump is any better than Netanyahu, but the point is for him to invest in this individual so much to the detriment of the Netanyahu's opposition inside the Israeli regime. I think it may have to do with the fact that Netanyahu, one of the reasons why Netanyahu constantly engages in war and creates crises is because he wants to stay in power, because he wants to stay out of jail, and he needs these crises. So maybe I was thinking that Trump is saying leave Netanyahu alone to the Israeli political establishment, so that maybe Netanyahu would calm down and put the United States under less pressure, Trump under less pressure to and ease tensions in the region. But again, this is just personal speculation. I have no evidence for this whatsoever.
Well, it could be the case, but do you see, sorry, just as a last question, do you see any signs that the war could return anytime soon, or is it so far, so far so good, I guess?
The feeling in Tehran is that the Israeli regime will probably attack again, because the first round didn't go well for the regime. In fact, it strengthened Iran, even though it was on day one, Iran was badly hurt. Many senior commanders were murdered and martyred, and of course, you had all these terrorists and these Takfiri terrorists inside Iran carrying out sabotage. So day one was very bad for Iran. But then after, I think, 14 hours, when the missiles and drones began to hit Israel, we saw gradually the tide turn after a couple of days. That was becoming increasingly clear. And by the end of the war, on day 9, 10, 11, it was clear that Netanyahu was in trouble. So if you look at it from that perspective, one would say that the Israeli regime probably should not attack, because Iran is obviously stronger, and Iran right now is preparing itself for a very very severe attack on the Israeli regime if they initiate something. But then again, we have to go back to Netanyahu and the fact that Netanyahu needs a crisis. He needs to have the region in turmoil. And so it is quite possible that he and his allies will, and quite probable in the eyes of many here, that they will strike again. And, you know, one of the things that happened in this 12-day war is that one major myth was busted. And that was the myth that we've seen in the West for well over a decade. And that is that they've always been saying that Iran is a house of cards. It can easily collapse. All we have to do is give it a push. That's what we've been hearing in American think tanks for a very long time now. And this war, you know, they murdered so many senior Revolutionary Guards officers and generals that based on that assessment, the country should have collapsed. But it didn't. And the country, the population rallied behind not just the state and the leader, but the guards themselves. And I think that destroyed the myth that Iran is somehow inherently weak. In fact, I think it shows the opposite. It shows how strong Iran is, that you can kill so many of its leaders, but nothing will happen, and people will come to the streets in support. So I would argue with vigorously that Iran has emerged stronger as a result of this war, and much more popular across the world as well. And so I don't think it's smart for the regime to attack. But I think the expectation in Iran is that Netanyahu, who every day is violating the ceasefire in Lebanon, despite the fact that the Western countries are guarantors, and he tore up the ceasefire agreement with Gaza alongside Trump. So the expectation in Iran is that he will carry out an attack, but this time around the Iranians are far more prepared, and the plan is to strike the Israeli regime much harder.
Well, Professor Marandi, so
The long-range surface-to-air missile defense system, dubbed Bavar 373, which has joined Iranian armed forces, has proven its capabilities in the 12-day war in June with Israel, capable of detecting and tracking fighter jets, such as F-35, which is called Stealth, Iranian sources reported on Sunday, June 6. Bavar 373 without foreign dependence, produced by Iranian Defense Ministry, in cooperation with local manufacturers and universities, was launched in August 2016. It is designed to intercept various air targets, has a detection range for large targets, such as F-22, F-35, cruise missiles and helicopters, and is capable of destroying targets up to 400 kilometers away. For the first time, the Iranian army has operated Bavar 373 by releasing footage of the advanced defense system, which can work together with S-300 missile system to create a strong air defense shield. There are reports and images during the war that several Israeli fighter jets, including F-35, were successfully destroyed by the unnamed Iranian defense system, shot down to the ground. That is why the Zionist regime sabotaged the highly competitive and feared Bavar, which was on their route before the attack on June 12. Although Bavar 373 has the ability to take out targets such as F-35, the situation at that time was disrupted by Mossad from inside, disabled by internal saboteurs. Literally in the first minutes of the attack, they attacked it with anti-tank weapons. Israel recklessly claimed to have completely neutralized Bavar, instead begging for a ceasefire through Trump, losing the war due to Iranian surprising retaliation, responding to Israeli heinous attack on Iran, which resulted in many civilian casualties. Next time,
Israel will think 1,000 times before attacking Iran again. Currently, the condition of Bavar system has been quickly restored to a combat-ready state. During the 12-day war alone, footage shows how Bavar 373 worked, intercepting incoming Israeli threats. It is clear that projectiles were destroyed at all and melted into the air. This system is an important achievement in Iranian air defense capabilities as a milestone that shows its independence in defense technology. Bavar 373 has been in the spotlight for its capabilities, especially in the context of regional tensions.
What if we told you that one Chinese fighter jet is forcing a major rethink in the global arms race? That's exactly what's happening with the J-10CE. From its combat debut to taking center stage at Lima 2025, this sleek warplane isn't just flying, it's disrupting. With verified combat success and next-gen tech, it's challenging long-standing market leaders and turning heads worldwide. Let's get into it. The journey of the J-10 fighter jet is more than a story of engineering. It's a symbol of how China transformed itself into a serious player in the aerospace industry. It all began with a need to develop a high-performance, multi-role combat aircraft without relying on foreign suppliers. That mission laid the groundwork for what would become the J-10 series, a line of jets that helped revolutionize China's air capabilities. When the original J-10A entered service in 2006, it marked a significant achievement. But it was only the beginning. Over the next 2 decades, Chinese aerospace engineers upgraded the design, adding major enhancements in avionics, maneuverability, and weapons integration. The evolution led to the J-10C, a more advanced variant used by the Chinese military, and its export version, the J-10CE. The J-10CE isn't just a platform with strong specifications. It embodies China's ability to produce advanced fighter jets with independent intellectual property rights, a point often emphasized by Chinese military analysts. This independence allowed for full domestic control over manufacturing, upgrades, and export decisions. One of the standout features of the J-10CE is its full-authority digital fly-by-wire system, which is triaxial and quadruple redundant. That's a technical way of saying it offers exceptional flight control stability, which makes the aircraft easier to maneuver under high-G conditions. This system rivals those found in more expensive Western jets. The jet is also equipped with a digitally integrated avionics suite, which includes an advanced AESA radar that allows it to detect, track, and engage targets across long distances, even in environments with heavy electronic interference. Paired with a modern glass cockpit and high situational awareness systems, the pilot can manage missions more efficiently than ever before. The airframe itself reflects modern design philosophies, incorporating composite materials and titanium alloys to reduce weight and enhance durability. China's use of digital machining systems has also allowed it to produce the aircraft at scale with high precision and efficiency. Ultimately, the J-10CE is not just a domestic product, it's a showcase of China's aerospace progress. One of the biggest shifts in how the J-10CE is perceived happened recently, when the aircraft was confirmed to have completed its first verified combat operation. For years, analysts questioned whether Chinese-built jets had the field experience to match their technical claims. That doubt was shattered the moment the J-10C's performance was publicly acknowledged in real operations by official and semi-official news sources. Though specifics remain limited due to operational confidentiality, credible reports from multiple outlets confirmed that a J-10CE, exported to a client nation, successfully executed a high-stakes air mission. The result? A sudden credibility boost for the platform. which had until then been largely viewed through the lens of theoretical performance. This moment was perfectly timed with the aircraft's global appearance at Lima 2025, one of Asia's largest aerospace exhibitions. Held in Malaysia, the Langkawi International Maritime and Aerospace Exhibition served as a major platform for China to present its technological achievements to the world. And the J-10CE didn't just show up, it dominated attention. International media coverage, including detailed photos and interviews, focused heavily on the jet's export-ready configuration and newly proven track record. Dozens of visiting defense delegations, aviation experts, and journalists flocked to the Chinese booth. What they found was a modern, sleek, and now battle-tested fighter jet. Adding to the impact was China's deployment of the BIDE aerobatic team, flying J-10CS, the military version of the CE, during high-profile performances. Supported by the Yu-20 aerial refueling tanker, the team completed long-range flights and precision maneuvers that highlighted not just the jet's capabilities but also the sophistication of China's logistics and training ecosystem. This global showcase was more than just a sales pitch. It was a demonstration of system-level integration, a fighter jet supported by data links, refueling aircraft, advanced maintenance infrastructure, and highly trained pilots. In doing so, China presented the J-10CE as more than just a fighter, it's a platform for full-spectrum modernization. The J-10C's emergence has disrupted more than just expectations, it's challenging the very structure of the global defense market. Traditionally, high-performance fighter jets came with high price tags and long delivery schedules, often from Western manufacturers like Lockheed Martin or Dassault. But China is offering a serious alternative, a capable, modern jet with flexible terms and competitive costs. Let's start with affordability. A full procurement of French Rafale fighters, for instance, can cost around $200 million per unit when including training, spares, and long-term support. The J-10CE, on the other hand, comes in at a significantly lower cost, estimated at $40 to $60 million, depending on configuration and support package. For many nations, that difference isn't marginal, it's the deciding factor. And this isn't a budget compromise. The J-10CE offers ASA radar, beyond visual range missile capability, electronic warfare support, and even options for network integration with airborne early warning systems. It checks nearly every box that an Air Force might ask for, without locking buyers into exclusive ecosystems or limiting their political alignment. China also provides a flexible procurement strategy. Countries can choose tailored packages that include aircraft, simulators, training systems, maintenance support, and even local assembly in some cases. This modularity is especially appealing for nations with unique operational requirements or budget constraints. More importantly, China backs its offers with rapid production and delivery capabilities. Unlike many Western systems plagued by backlogs and delays, China has built a fast, digitally driven manufacturing base that allows it to scale up production when needed. For clients who require new jets in months rather than years, this is a critical advantage. The bigger picture here is geopolitical as well as commercial. As more countries seek to diversify their defense suppliers, China is stepping in with appealing alternatives. These deals not only strengthen bilateral relations, but also increase China's presence in strategic regions like Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. The J-10CE's success is opening doors, not just for itself, but for an entire catalog of Chinese aerospace exports. And as the aircraft gains traction in more defense procurement discussions, it's becoming clear this isn't a one-off headline. The J-10CE is no longer just a product of China's ambition. It's a proven force reshaping the global fighter jet market. With real operational experience, advanced systems, and unmatched cost-effectiveness, it's challenging long-standing assumptions about who can lead in aerospace innovation. More than a jet, it represents a shift in global influence, where technology, performance, and access are no longer confined to traditional players. As more countries explore alternatives, the J-10CE may just be the beginning of a much larger transformation in the skies. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on space exploration and scientific discoveries, and don't forget to leave a comment below. Also, you can visit our website, move in the skies, successfully refueling two H-6N strategic bombers mid-air using its powerful YY-20 tanker. This isn't just a routine drill. It marks the first time the world has seen China demonstrate long-range strike capability with such precision. It's a major leap in global air operations, shifting how far Chinese bombers can really go. In this video, we break down exactly how it happened and why it changes everything in the Indo-Pacific. What happened in June 2025 might look like just another mid-air refueling drill, but it marked a significant shift in global aerospace capability. China publicly demonstrated, for the first time, a successful in-flight refueling operation between its Y-20U aerial tanker, officially known as the YY-20A, and two H-6N strategic bombers. This wasn't just a rehearsal or an isolated flight. It was a coordinated demonstration of real operational maturity, caught on video by onlookers and broadcast widely. The YY-20A tanker is a heavily modified version of the Y-20 military transport aircraft, developed by Xi'an Aircraft Industrial Corporation. First flown in 2013 and inducted into the People's Liberation Army Air Force, PLAF, around 2016, the Y-20 was originally designed for heavy cargo transport. But its evolution into a refueling platform was part of a strategic vision that started materializing around 2018, when satellite imagery first spotted tanker-configured prototypes. The aerial tanker features 3 refueling points, 2 wing-mounted and 1 on the fuselage center line, allowing it to refuel up to 3 aircraft simultaneously. In the June 23 drill, 2 H-6N bombers, with tail numbers 55331 and 55334, were seen connecting to the drogue system in formation. This configuration isn't just for visual show. It reflects complex coordination involving flight control systems, navigation accuracy, and aircrew synchronization. What makes the YY-20A so significant is its fuel capacity and range. Powered by WS-20 HIG bypass turbofan engines, introduced in 2023, the tanker can offload up to 90 tons of fuel, a figure that's nearly 3 to 4 times more than China's earlier H-6U refuelers. That fuel doesn't just keep aircraft airborne, it fundamentally changes how long they can stay on mission, how far they can go, and what kind of routes they can take. Another advantage is mobility and efficiency. The new engines allow for extended range operations, reportedly beyond 5,000 kilometers, enabling the YY-20 to support bomber and fighter operations deep into the Pacific and across wider maritime zones. The YY-20 refueling breakthrough wouldn't matter nearly as much without the aircraft it supports, and that's where the H-6 bomber fleet comes into focus. The H-6 isn't a single aircraft, but a family of long-evolving platforms based on China's licensed production of the Soviet Tu-16, which entered Chinese service in 1969. Over the decades, this bomber has undergone significant modernization, resulting in several variants tailored for different mission profiles. The variant at the center of this transformation is the H-6N, first revealed publicly in 2019. The H-6N was designed with extended range capability in mind, featuring a fixed aerial refueling probe on its nose, a design adaptation that anticipated eventual support from aerial tankers like the YY-20. But the refueling hardware is just one piece of a much larger evolution. The H-6N boasts modern avionics, including a glass cockpit, digital fire control systems, and long-range navigation equipment, bringing it into line with 21st-century aerospace standards. Performance-wise, the H-6N is equipped with twin-D, 30kp, 2 turbofan engines, giving it a top speed of approximately Mach 0.75 and a base combat radius exceeding 3,500 kilometers. But with in-flight refueling, that range can be extended to around 12,000 kilometers, a distance that reaches far beyond the first and second island chains and into areas like Guam, Hawaii, and possibly Alaska. This redefines the bomber's role from regional to truly intercontinental in capability. And the H-6N isn't just flying further, it's carrying more impactful payloads. It can support a payload capacity of over 20 tons, which includes a range of advanced long-range strike systems. These include YJ-12 supersonic anti-ship missiles, CJ-10 land attack cruise missiles, and the X-13 air-launched ballistic missile, believed to reach up to 3,000 kilometers. Importantly, this isn't a standalone platform. The H-6K, a related variant, has been observed carrying up to 4 YJ-21 air-launched ballistic missiles, again suggesting a growing diversity in payload options across the H-6 series. This bomber fleet, once viewed primarily as a regional legacy platform, is now positioned as a key enabler of long-distance patrol and support operations. The most significant consequence of combining YY-20 tankers with refuel-capable H-6N bombers isn't technological, it's strategic. With this pairing, China now has the ability to conduct sustained long-range missions across the Indo-Pacific, including operational areas far beyond its traditional reach. This fundamentally alters how distance, geography, and power projection are calculated in the region. Historically, one of the primary limitations in China's air power strategy was the inability to maintain a persistent air presence over long distances without relying on external bases. The U.S., by comparison, has long relied on a network of overseas installations, Guam, Japan, the Philippines, and others, to support its global reach. China, until recently, had no comparable solution. The YY-20 changes that dynamic by offering a mobile refueling solution that can accompany strike assets wherever they go. The June 2025 refueling event wasn't conducted in isolation. It followed closely behind joint naval exercises, including carrier strike group operations conducted beyond the second island chain. This chain, stretching from Japan through the Mariana Islands, has traditionally served as a barrier limiting the operational depth of Chinese forces. Crucially, this development fits within China's evolving anti-access/area denial (A2/AD) approach, a doctrine aimed at maintaining freedom of movement in nearby waters while discouraging external forces from operating close to its borders. But aerial refueling pushes this approach outward. Instead of focusing only on regional zones, the PLAF can now extend operations across the Pacific, creating uncertainty about where assets may be deployed or how long they can remain airborne. Even without a next-generation stealth bomber like the still-in-development H-20, China has found a way to maximize the potential of its current fleet. The H-6N, supported by the YY-20, can remain in flight long enough to monitor vast maritime zones, shadow naval formations, or position itself near key strategic corridors. Additionally, China's use of multiple methods to extend bomber range, including temporary operations from Russian airfields, as seen during joint drills off Alaska in mid-2024, shows that this capability isn't reliant on a single solution. Whether through aerial tankers or forward deployment, China is developing overlapping strategies to guarantee reach and sustainability. China's successful refueling of H-6N bombers using the YY-20 tanker marks a turning point in long-range air operations. With extended reach and in-flight endurance, these platforms now enable sustained missions deep into the Indo-Pacific without relying on forward bases. This isn't just technical progress, it's a shift in strategic flexibility and operational presence. The combination of a modern aerial tanker with a refuel-capable bomber gives China the tools to reshape regional planning and redefine reach. As future platforms like the H-20 approach, one thing is clear: China's air power is evolving faster and flying farther than ever before. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like.
Coffee. Follow me.